All right, greetings. We are recording. Welcome, everybody. How is everybody doing today? Feeling good? Oh, it didn't sound too good. Let me try it again. Feeling good?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Sound like you guys were dead there for a second. All right, we want to welcome everybody. Majority of you guys have been here before. You know what it is we do. You know our background. Obviously, we've been doing this for. Now, we're not telling you this because we want a pat on the back. But we've been doing this for quite a long time, about 25, 26 years now, maybe more. I could be off since, what, 88, 89? The topic that we chose tonight, Heka-Egyptian black magic. This is going to venture off into a few areas because there's different aspects that are connected to this, because a lot of magical systems have branched out from what they call Heka. First, before we begin, does everybody know what Heka is? H-E-K-A, no? Who does? Raise your hand. Okay, who doesn't? Raise your hand. Okay, not everybody's listening because we only had like 4 people participate in that. Let's try it again. Participation. Who knows what Heka is? Raise your hand. Okay, that's 2, 3 people. So I should see everybody else's hand on the next question, and I didn't. Who doesn't know what Heka is or is not familiar with it? Okay, we still have people not participating. All right, short bus people, let's try this again. Beep, beep. People that rode the short bus here. Do you or do you not aware of what Heka is, the term? H-E-K-A. You see this in various different Egyptian texts, like the Coming Forth by Day, the Pyramid text, the Funerary text. All right? Heka is the term they use for magic. Okay? You'll see they'll say in a lot of different texts there's 3 aspects. They're not deities, so this is important to understand. That the creative force of will, Hu, Heka, and Seer are attributes or aspects of how this magical system works. Long story short, we're going to start here. We're going to kind of jump forward and then go back so you can understand. Long story short, you're going to find out that these are the governing principles that make this magical system work. And it's how you tap into the elements. It's how you work with different various aspects of energy, archetypes, and we're going to discuss a little bit about that this evening. Set, okay? When you go back to the Order or the Brotherhood of Set, they were some of the original practitioners of black magic. Why we're going to start there is because it's kind of connected to what we did last night. A lot of these quote-unquote black orders, assassin orders, some of the stuff we discussed last night, actually go further back and go back into ancient Egypt. We've also done shows on the Sith, and phonetically you see the phonetics of the word are very similar, because one of the titles in the Greek aspect of the Egyptian mysteries for Set is Seth. So Seth and Sith are phonetically the same. When you look how a lot of these orders are grafted, we talked briefly last night, dress, codes, the principles of the order, and how the orders function, you're going to find out that they're very similar in nature. Real Heka or black magic, which in conscious circles, you don't hear nobody talking about this shit. All right, because all you hear is everybody talking about the basic, mundane, in my interpretation, or opinion, I should say. It's always the religious aspect of Egypt. And most people that study Egypt are religious, and they're just not conscious of it. Because they still look at the deities as gods to externally worship, which is a huge mistake. They're still paying reverence, homage, and respect to something outside of themselves. These orders' core principle was based on that fact. They didn't accept the reality of anything outside of themselves as being God. Now, we were having this discussion earlier today. The problem with that is it's hard for people to fathom that. They can't put it into perspective. What do you mean? So there's not something externally outside of myself that is governing and controlling everything around me in my life and in the universe or the universes or the multiverses? And the answer is no. The reason why it's hard for you to grasp that, I'm not saying us per se here, I'm just speaking in general. The reason why it's hard for most people to grasp that concept is because the conditioning of religion and the impact of it on their subconscious mind is a lot deeper than they really are conscious of. because you'll find people that get into these practices that they carry over a lot of religious overtones and they're not conscious of it. They say they're Kemetic, or they'll say they're conscious, or they're into African spirituality, but it's layered in overtones of monotheism or religion. You see it just by the verbiage they use, the terminology they use, their spiritual practices. So these orders, especially Heka-Egyptian black magic, they were dedicated to keeping this. I don't want to really just say the secrets, because really nothing is a secret, because anyone can gain admittance or membership to these mysteries. They just have to prove their worth. So I don't want. Let's not present it like it was just an exclusive club and nobody can get in. You can get in, but the problem being is you have to prove your worth. But they believed in nobody coming in and diluting the information. And part of what you guys did last night was symbolic of some of the stuff we're talking about now and some of the stuff we're going to talk about moving forward. So when we deal with Heka, we did a show on this, actually, a radio show not too far back, a couple weeks back. I want to expound a little bit more on it tonight. The deities, let's start there, because in Heka you're going to find that working, you'll see stuff. We read actually a portion on one of the shows from the Coming Forth by Day. You will see terms as like, I've become like Horus or Ray Harakirti, I ascend to the skies. We hear all these terminologies when we're reading these texts. What do they really mean? You'll see in some rituals where, I've become like Sekhmet and devoured the gods. That's another term you see frequently in some of these texts. What do these mean? Okay, when you're doing your ritualistic, quote unquote, magical practices, we talked about this. You should be going into that work looking at archetypes based on that level, because when you're reading that text, the individual, whoever's speaking in that text, is dictating to the point that they've raised themselves up to a certain level and they have embodied that deity. That's the same process with this. Like, we talked about this. And feel free to add anything you got something to add. The difference between worshiping a deity and archetype and embodying and becoming the aspect of that archetype, that's the difference of this path and every other path.
Let me add this. Mm-hmm. For example, as he's relating, when you are doing, let's say, a ritual, in many aspects, regardless which path you come from when you do your sorcery and magic, a lot of times you'll see in the rituals where they say, oh, art, whoever, or oh, Heru, or oh, they're always calling out, right? Whereas in this aspect, instead of calling out and saying, oh, Heru, or oh, Baphomet, or whatever, what you're doing is becoming the very thing you're connecting or utilizing for symbolic ritual purpose. So you would say, instead of saying, oh, Master Anpu, Anubis, or Ta, or whatever, you would actually put yourself in the place of Ta, Khnum, or whatever, and you would actually turn around where you would say, I, the Master Khnum, or because what's happening is when you're utilizing an archetype, okay? Basically, archetypes are metaphors of states or conditions that are all existing within us that we're trying to reach or elevate to. So when you're saying I, Anpu, what you're doing is you're becoming the guide and master to your own underworld, your own duat, or your own subconscious, unconscious mind, where you can utilize opening the 12 gates, also related to the 12 occult nerves of your mind, to access deeper or nether regions of your mind to bring forth the necessary condition or process that you're trying to connect to and work and activate within you. For example, Anpu in his metaphoric stories was abandoned. Okay, well, it appeared to be abandoned, but it was actually a prior arrangement between Nebhut and Aset. So what happened is that when Nebhut left him in the wilderness, that is a symbolic story of being abandoned. So if you're working and you've had abandonment issues in the past that you've never been able to overcome, you would access the principle and the power of what Anpu represents of being able to go into your darkest nether regions of your subconscious mind, where this is all still conditioned or programmed from childhood to today, and utilize it as if you're Anpu guiding yourself through the nether regions and the gates, the 12 gates that you are symbolically trying to open within yourself, so you can bring forth the work, the results that you're trying to accomplish. Instead of looking at it as I'm calling out to Anpu, here's the statue, here's the pirates, the painting or whatever, and you're looking at it as if some external source, what you're doing is you're internalizing and becoming the very source. This is why if you go into certain texts like the pyramid text, let's say, you will hear Unas saying, I have become, etc., etc., etc. I have now become this. See, but what happens is in this modern mentality, many people, regardless, whatever you tell me, whatever you want to say, many people who've gotten into the Kemetic or Egyptian thing now still came from a religious point of view, whether they were Christian, Muslim, Jew, whatever process. They came from that view, and it's still in their subconscious mind programmed deep inside of there, and they still will take on the archetypes or the Neteru, whatever you want to use to make you feel good at the end of the day. They look at it and they still externalize it as if now it's different because I'm more back into the Kemetic African thing, but in reality you're still doing the same Christian concept, because now Ra has become the Most High. Most High of what? You understand, when you say Most High, you bring into by nature and by law, the duality of Most High would be Most Low. So who's the Most Low?
Right.
You understand? You have to understand that these concepts are still deep within your subconscious mind and still deeply encoded and programmed within you. So it doesn't matter if you wear all the trinkets, you wear the dashikis and everything else. It's external. You look good on the outside, but the inside still kind of related or holding on to the Christian, Muslim, Hebraic, whatever concepts you're coming from. You think you left it, but you haven't. It's still there. So what you have to do, and we're going to do a whole class on this, you have to deconstruct and reconstruct all of these things within your mind to cause the actual transformation and change, where you could actually say, you know what, I've actually left all the religion behind, okay? Every little remnant that's still remaining inside of me has been destroyed, and now I can understand what the Kemetic or Egyptians meant by I have become.
That's right.
I have now, etc., etc. You will understand that because you're taking the actual power of what you normally, traditionally have been taught to externalize, send outward, and you're taking it inward and utilizing your own power to become greater than you were yesterday. To challenge yourself to be better, you have to confront your BS. You have to confront your bullshit. You have to confront your delusions. You have to confront all the things that we put off to the side and think I'm going to meditate it away or chant it away, and that's going to make me holy and roly and purified and untainted and get to the next level. When in reality, if you don't face your bullshit, it's still going to come out. And the only way to do that is to confront it head on. You can't say, well, I'll do that tomorrow. Nobody's promised tomorrow, so how do you know that you shouldn't just deal with it right then and there as it's occurring? So when we deal with this path, you deal with things as they happen right then and there. You don't put it off tomorrow and say, well, you know what? I got that. Heru's going to bless me to tomorrow. So you go back to the same Jesus crap. When you say that, you just transferred Heru from Jesus to Heru, and now you're still saying, well, that's my Savior because he's the one that saved us all. No. Stop.
To add on that, something we talked about too, I want to bring back up a little while back. I think where the confusion comes in, people get stuck. When he was, Brother Ravana was just mentioning the deities, the archetypes. See, people think there was one Heru or Horus. People think there was only one Ra, one Shango, one Obatala. The problem is most people get stuck because all you're grasping onto is the last incarnation of those archetypes. All that meant was there was many Ras, there was many Tahutis, there was many Ampus. Anyone that was able to raise themselves up to a certain level, consciousness, spiritually, they were able to obtain that title. So when you're reading in those texts like you just recited, I've now become like Ampu, what that basically means is that person was initiated to a certain levels of the mysteries, and they earned that title. See, we got to understand they're titles. Titles tie into archetypes because archetypes represent certain levels of consciousness that these archetypes represent. So you got to understand when you're reading them texts, this is why you had triads and gnomes in ancient Egypt. There were many triads of Ra or Re in many different dynastic periods. It's just these specific triads raised themselves up to a certain level of consciousness where they were able to now carry that title. When you look at a lot of the names, when you see Seti on the end of Egyptian names, that was somebody that was linked into the priesthood of Set. And they earned to carry the title of Set on their name based how they raised themselves up. When you see Heru in a name, when it's in a combination with other names, same thing. Any of the deities. So I think where we get confused, and again, I'm not speaking to us per se just in here, where people in general get confused, they read these stories, and then when you start talking about the duality of this, and how, wait, there was many Herus? There was many Anpus? Yes. There was not just one. See, when you do that, you're back to monotheism again. You're again taking a step backwards because you're still looking to centralize it on one thing to focus on externally, now setting you back in that path. Because what you can't grasp is, well, where did I come from? How did I get here? How did I evolve? Who created me? Who's controlling all this that's quote-unquote creating the illusion that exists around me? You're not going to be able to figure that out if you don't do spiritual work that transcends you outside of person, place, and thing. Because you're trying to answer something, a three-dimensional being that we all are right now as we're sitting here. We're all guided by the fact that we deal with person, place, and thing. That's a reality. Everything you conceive of is going to fall on the person, place, and thing. We can sit here all night, and you can try so hard to think of the most bizarre shit in the world, but it's either going to be a thing, a person, or a place. When you start doing spiritual practices, let's say astral traveling, tapping into your subjective realm, working rituals where you start to disconnect from what we call these lower planes, and I'm using terminology we can grasp, then you start to get the answers to those questions. See, people want the answers to those questions sitting here, and mind you, the person asking the question is governed by physical things, person, place, and thing, and all they deal with is their objective universe. They don't deal with their subjective, so they want you to give an answer from the subjective, and they want you to do the work for them and connect that to their objective. But then when we turn around and tell them, no, man, you gotta, being an adept on this path is about getting on the path and doing the work. If you paid attention to the oath last night, when you did your ritual, you took that oath. And again, that oath was not done. You didn't join anything. You're not part of any, like we said, etc., etc. But you took an oath to yourself when you did that last night. And regardless whether you connect or disconnect, okay, it was also reiterated to you, you now have a spiritual bond on this path, whether you like it or not. And that could be good or bad. Because when you connect with these forces, I'm going to keep telling people, don't fuck around with it. Because if you open up some gateways and say you just decide you don't want to fuck with it no more and you decide you want to leave, it's not that easy. Okay? I say that not to spook people out and scare them. I say that because there's a responsibility on this path. You don't mess with stuff like this. This is real deal shit. This is not, I'm going to play conscious and spiritual and Ujuma, Alafia, and wrap my head and put on some nice oils and meditate and then say, nah, I'm fucking with it tomorrow. Not how this works. When you start invoking energies on this path and carrying out rituals that activate certain forces, you better be prepared to embrace them on all levels. And it's not all pleasant. So let's not paint the picture. It's not all pleasant.
That's the thing people have to understand. When you do work, spiritual work, many of us have been trained that if I do this, then this is the end result. Right? That's what you want. But when you work diligently and consistently on yourself, which is what the left-hand path is really all about, you get what you need, not what you want. And what you need may not always correlate to what you want. What you need may be things that you did not know existed about yourself. Okay? All of us, when we were young, experienced things in our childhood that still, even at whatever age you are today, is affecting you right now. Now you may say, well, I'm an adult, I'm so superior, I'm great. BS. most of us still have things from our childhood that affect us today. Okay? Simple example. You wanted your daddy's attention because you drew something. You were 5 or 6 or 7, whatever. And this drawing meant the world to you. But daddy was too busy watching football, basketball, baseball, whatever. He ignored you. Now, it may seem like a little inconspicuous thing. It may seem like there's nothing heavy about that. Yes, it is. Because some people from that day forth became attention whores. You know what I mean by that? They do anything to seek attention because they never got the attention from the person at that moment in their life, which was like a god to them, their dad, their mom, whatever. They didn't get the attention when they most needed it. So, the rest of their life, they do extreme things, even absurd things, to get the attention that they didn't get from that moment. And it still affects them to this very day. You can actually pinpoint some of these people. Some of them will have extreme ways of dressing. Some of them will, for example, wear Flavor Flav clocks, okay, or things of that nature. You understand, this is a cry for attention, but I myself don't even realize it because it's been so embedded in my subconscious mind that I don't realize I've been doing extreme things to get the attention, all because of that incident when I was young. Well, when you work this, you start to bring that to the surface, and you start to say, whoa, I didn't realize I had done a lot of these things for that attention. And now I see how it affects me right now, in this very day, at this very moment, I can see it. That's not the only job, though. That's fine. You brought it to the surface, but see, this is the key on this path. I've heard many people bring things to the surface, but you know what they do? They leave it right there. Oh, I figured this out about myself. That's good. What do you do about it? Right? Because people leave it right there, but then they'll go on and tell you, well, I did this, and I'm great, and I do all these wonderful things. I. But then we bring it right back to, but what about that situation? Because that situation is affecting you even to right now, because you're overly emphasizing your eyes, and all the great things you want. See, that's still the attention coming out at that moment. I want your attention, so I'm going to make myself seem like this. But you're not dealing with that part of yourself that is causing you to, in the moment, overemphasize all these great things about yourself and not deal with your weaknesses. My weaknesses, listen, you're only as successful as your failures. Do you realize that? You're only as successful as your failures. As much success you have is as much you won't have, because your failures, your weaknesses, your doubts, your insecurities will bring you right back down. When at the very moment, if you had conquered and mastered those inconsistencies and deficiencies about yourself, would have propelled you past that point that you always get to and stop. That point that you can't get past and stop. And you keep beating your head to that point. You keep saying, damn, I get there, but then when I get there, I fail. Because you haven't dealt with that part of you that is most necessary to overcome that situation. So how many times are you going to be the rat in the maze to figure out how to get to the cheese? The rat can figure out sometimes faster than a human can figure this crap out, because we think we're so superior, intellectual, and everything else, but yet we're still going in the same maze trying to figure out the same issue. Why we can't? Guess why? Most of the time we externalize that. Oh, she did it to me. He did it to me. They did it to me. No, you did it to yourself. We take responsibility for our success and our failures on this path. We do not blame anybody for anything, and we don't give big props to everybody or anybody for everything. We take responsibility for our success and failures, and when you start to work that, you'll start to understand why for ancient and multiple times they utilize different archetypes to propel themselves to be what they could be, that is still dwelling inside you. Those powers are still there. You just need to activate it.
And to add to that, 2 things I want to throw in here real quick that connects to what we're talking about. The 7 Hermetic Principles of Tahuti and Change. Let's talk about this real quick. You hear us always bring this up when this topic comes up, and there's a reason. Because the core principles, elements, and foundations to understanding this system really lies in those 7 Hermetic Principles. You really need to understand them. Now, we see, quote-unquote, in the Kemetic conscious communities, Everybody's always talking about ma'at, right? Ma'at. You gotta have ma'at. Well, you can't have ma'at if you do not understand the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti. Look right there to your left. They're posted right there. Okay, so let's just read real quick. It says the 7 attributes of ma'at: order, balance, harmony, truth, reciprocity, propriety, and righteousness. Okay? Now, how can you have any of those things if you do not understand who's read the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti and studied them intensely? You can't have ma'at without understanding that. They both go together. So you hear all these people saying it's about ma'at, and there's something Val Cadman, who came on the radio show last week, brought up, and we thought, man, he's 100% accurate. It's kind of the way we presented it, but he paraphrased it and said he hates that term because you can never have balancement. Balancement means you're at a standstill. You're not going forward and you're not going back. So that is the incorrect thing to say. He used the word harmony. Because when things are in harmony, it means there's a multitude of things that are functioning simultaneously and working together, which is going to take us into change in a second. So people are always focused on ma'at, which deals with the objective realm, and you got to have that because this is what's a manifestation of mastering the 7 Hermetic principles, which deals with tapping into the subjective realm. So again, the subjective realm is a representation of the 7 Hermetic principles, which manifests those principles there. So how in the world can somebody claim to master those when we go beyond that now and we see everything starts in the darkness or the subjective? You can't have any of those things if you haven't mastered that. And all when we say the darkness, we're talking about some of the stuff Brother Ravanoon just said, dealing with your bullshit, dealing with issues, dealing with stumbling blocks, dealing with your shortcomings. The first step on this path, as we talked about whenever time, because I can't remember the time, we talk about this a lot, is taking an inventory of yourself first. Anybody know what taking an inventory is? Let me tell you where they bit this from. You have the, what's the name of those wackos? All the Hollywood members of Scientology, is that it?
Yeah, Church Scientology.
They have a thing called auditing, right? Everybody heard of this, right? Which is more of a mind control technique that they use to really get into your mind to know about you so then they can fuck with you and play tricks on you. It's that process, but you do it to yourself. You need to take an inventory of yourself. First of all, when you come on this path, if you say, I want to be an adept of the black arts, I want to partake in this, I want to start doing rituals individually and collectively, and I want to grow. Cool, that sounds great. It sounds spiritual. Before you can even attempt to do that, you say, but before I do that, you can't give a sick person, okay, a lighter and some dynamite. You understand that? A crazy person. So if you're crazy and I put some dynamite and a lighter in your hand, it's gonna explode on you. So before you set out, you gotta say, hold on, what is my physical health? What is my mental health? What's going on in my life right now? What stresses and traumas am I dealing with now? And what in the past might still be affecting me now? Because we got shit that, as we've said before, we could have been bullied as children. We could have been treated like shit by our parents. We might have daddy and mommy issues. You might have females that are constantly in bad relationships because their mom was and they witnessed it and now they're in bad relationships. So it becomes a cycle. And they just deal with it by going from relationship to relationship. That's a problem trying to progress on this path. Then you have some dudes that might have a high sex drive, but they can't keep their dick in their pants and they fuck anything that's walking and moving. That's a problem on this path. I'm not talking about exploring your sexual desires in a disciplined environment. We're talking about some dude who, or not even dudes, females too,
Anybody.
that just has no control. Because see, what happens is on this path, you got to be more disciplined and selective because the sexual energy is even stronger. So it doesn't mean you can't explore. If you've got fantasies and desires, you should explore them. You should experience them. But remember, it's got to be more selective in doing this. That can become a problem. You have some people that ain't shit when it comes to holding on to money. They get it, as soon as it comes in one hand, bam, goes right out the other hand. You have some of us in the adult stages of our life that do have kids with terrible parents, but we don't want to face the reality of it. And then there's the flip side. You might be good in some of these areas. I'm saying this is how you do an inventory of yourself. This is step one before you can even move forward, because you can't just come in all jacked up on all levels and say, I'm going to set up an altar and put my implements on there. I'm just going to be... No, that's not how this works. You can do that with other bullshit that's out there, because all you got to do is fill out an application or just be a part of a group and put on the attire. You know, I'm wearing, some big African symbol now or whatever, and now that makes me officially a part of this. No, it don't. Maybe on the outside it does, but like Ravana Noon was saying earlier, looks good on the outside, but this and this is jacked the fuck up. And we don't want to address that. We want to pretend as if burying ourselves in some cultural philosophy is going to just, cover that all up. But what we're doing is, it's just like, if you constantly, what happens if you take a bottle of soda and you shake it up, right? The pressure just starts to come to the top, and what happens when you open it? Boom, it explodes. It's the same thing in this. Like as you're shaking that bottle by trying to pretend none of this exists. And then eventually you're going to have to open that cap. And guess what? Boom, everything's going to come to the surface, and you're going to be like, shit, I should have dealt with this at the time. Well, let me say this to keep this in mind. When you start to come on this path, if you don't prepare for that, it's going to hit you all at once. Because it is going to come to the surface. Not a matter of if. Because this path brings the abrupt change right on the spot. So it's not a matter of, oh, I can deal with it, I can mask it, I can hide it. Bullshit. What happens to those people that resist it, it just becomes more persistent, and it becomes a major issue somewhere in these travels. And then when that point comes, one of two things happen. They either come through like a trooper and a champion and made their job a little more rougher, or they just get consumed by it and they become straight pussy and go back to doing what they were doing. Change, real quick. You hear, this connects to change, okay? People have their interpretation of what change is. You always hear this in spiritual circles, and it makes me laugh. Anything that doesn't change dies. That sounds so deep, right? But if there's no consistency in that change, it's not change. Okay, let me give you an example. We all know people that are all over the place with shit. Okay, one day you see them, they're a Muslim. The next day you see them, they're a cultist. Next day you see them, they're Buddhist. Next time you see them, they're this. That is not consistent change. That is somebody that is in a crisis trying to find a self-identity because they don't know what they're doing. Now, the difference with us on this path, you say, well, on this path, I see you guys all over in every area. Exactly, but the difference is we're able to incorporate and bring that harmony, not balance in, where we're able to utilize the energy. See, this path is about tapping into the right energies at the right time for the right reasons. There's a difference in that type of change, whereas somebody is just constantly jumping from one thing to another, and there's no growth there. So what determines that change is inconsistent is when there's no growth. So if somebody's constantly changing, and you see them doing this and that, or her doing this and that, and 3, 4 years, 5 years down the road, they're still broke, they're still jacked up, their personal life is a mess, their family life's a mess, their relationship life is a mess. Now we can say that change is not consistent because it provided no growth. Now, if you're changing, day and night, but you're getting results, power to you then. Got no problem with that. But we got to be careful when we throw terminology out there like that. Because people throw that shit out there like it's so deep, like they're saying something heavy. Anything that doesn't change dies. And they step back like, and the person saying it, it's like, really? I mean, come on, seriously? All right. One other thing I wanted to get into real quick. This book here deals with some of the stuff we dealt with last night. All right, there's only one here, so I'm not going to be fighting over it. I'm going to get more of these. Let me give you an example. I'm not going to go into detail. Some of the aspects of this book. The Men in Black. Okay, the Jinn, or Jinn as some say. The Jinn are not what you think they are. Okay, we incorporated that in the ritual last night because the energy of the Jinn is what brought out the divinity in you last night when you did that ritual. Okay. Becoming to somebody that's not here said some really nonsensical stuff when they were going through the ritual. Somebody had blurted out, I'm here to defeat the Jinn. You're not defeating the Jinn. Okay? This gets a detailed breakdown of what that energy is and what it represents, and it takes it into other cultures. For an example, the Watchers, we talked about that. You heard that in the ritual last night. The Nephilium, all right? There's a part in here that I don't like to really agree with 100%. It connects it to the Reptoid connection. Black Death and Black Magic is a really good section in this book that connects the Jinn and some of the stuff we did last night. Okay? The Jinn was that energy when you were blindfolded, taking your circumference And notice you ain't counterclockwise around the lodge. I hope you was paying attention to that. Because that goes against and breaks the false illusion of what fake time is. That's a whole nother story. But your journey, and as you were making your circumferences, you were psychologically, whether you were conscious of it or not, some might have been. I heard somebody had said they went back to their childhood. I can't remember who that was. Oh, that was you. Okay. That's a good thing, because that energy is part of this path, when I just said 5 minutes ago, that brings that abrupt change without a moment's notice. See, when it comes, you don't get a notification of it.
Yeah. I'm coming. Get ready.
Yeah,
you don't hear that.
That shit doesn't happen. You don't get a telegram or a letter or an email. It just comes. Now the question is, are you ready to deal with it? I had people come to me up after rituals and say they remembered horrible things in their childhood. That's not a bad thing. That is you tapping into your spirit, your highest, whatever term you want to make it feel good. Something is rising to the surface and bringing you to the awareness you need to address it. So if you're seeing that, if you're going through these rituals and for whatever reason you keep going back to your childhood, bingo, green light's on, you need to go to that area and focus, because something within you is arising telling you this needs to be dealt with. You just been burying it. You know, maybe your mom talked to you like shit your whole life, and psychologically it bothered you. Maybe she belittled you. Your dad belittled you. And you don't think it affects you. You say, no, I'm past it. But why does it still keep coming up? You understand? Something like that?
Yeah. You may be in your everyday travels, and you keep seeing a certain symbol keep popping up. Let's say, a certain color keeps popping up in your life. Or you keep seeing a certain archetype or deity keep popping up. Why do you think that's happening? The reason it's happening is because your subconscious mind is trying to send a symbol. How does your subconscious mind work? It works on repetition, okay? You keep repeating something over and over, you program your subconscious mind. It works on trauma or dramatic effect, okay? Initiation rituals have been used for thousands of years to impart this and help the process of you to reprogram and decondition your mind. And the most potent way is repetition. Over and over and over. And then the highest and most potent way is symbolism. Symbols are your subconscious mind trying to reveal.
I'm sorry. We got to go over this.
Okay. Trying to share something to you about something you're not addressing, avoiding, ignoring, or putting off. So if you keep seeing a certain symbol keep popping up, pay attention. Thank you. Pay attention, because if you don't see that and you don't acknowledge it, then what happens is it's going to continue to persist to show itself. Resistance leads to persistence. Whatever you resist will continue to persist. So if you keep seeing something over and over popping up, 3 years later you say, oh, I dealt with it, I'm good. Hello, here comes the same symbol popping up in your life. No, you didn't deal with it. You just addressed it on the surface layer. It's still sitting there. Pay attention and figure out. Let's say somebody recently I spoke to had the symbol of an elephant keep popping up. Okay? What archetype of deity do y'all know is related to that? Ganesh or Ganesha, right? From the Dravidian Hindu perspective, right? Ganesh is an obstacle breaker. He removes obstacles, breaks obstacles. Hello, what do you think that's trying to tell you? That symbol is trying to tell you you have an obstacle in your path, but you're not addressing it. So you need to find a way to address it. Here comes the symbol saying you can utilize this kind of symbol to help you or propel you or activate the energy or force you need within you to overcome that obstacle. Until you address that, you're going to keep seeing elephants. And you're going to think you're crazy after a while, because every dream you have, there's a damn elephant in there. And you're going to say, well, why the hell this elephant there? The elephant ain't there because he's your buddy or she's your buddy. The elephant's there because you're like ignoring it. And it's trying to tell you you got an issue, but you ain't addressing it. So until you address this, I'm going to keep popping up. Some of y'all have probably started experiencing this. Some of y'all are probably experiencing it right now as we speak. Some of y'all will experience this in the future. Acknowledge and confront when that occurs. The key is to confront. You can acknowledge, everybody can acknowledge things, but confront it. Okay? Don't put it off to tomorrow and act like it's not affecting me. If everywhere you go you keep seeing the same symbol, it's telling you something. Okay? Let's say you're a female and you keep seeing the same dude pop up over and over and over. Okay? You can take that the way you want. I'm not going to go there with y'all. That's how y'all want to see it. But that dude can either represent a symbol of something you want or something you're trying to overcome in your life.
That's right.
Okay? So, which one is it? Well, we can't answer that for you. Only you can. And you have to address that. Because, I'm going to give you an example. Most of us growing up, we ended up creating a type of attraction to a certain type of person in our lives, right? But now I want you to listen to this closely and analyze. If that type was really for you, why didn't it work over and over and over? The type wasn't for you. Okay? There's this old saying in let's say, when you deal with holistic medicine, right? I went through that. I got my degree and all that. When you deal with holistic medicine, let's say, right? They'll tell you that your favorite foods are actually usually the worst food for you. Your favorite is usually the worst for you. Now, I'm utilizing that as an analogy. I'm not telling you that that's what it is. I'm saying it's an analogy. Your favorite type of attraction is not necessarily the person or what you need, because that's what led you to where you are today, single, broke, angry, upset, one of those things. And if you keep running into this...
Or all of them.
Yeah, or all of them. If you keep running into this guy and you keep saying, man, I keep running into the same type of guys, and you keep allowing yourself to get in the same relationships over and over, it's just a little variation of the same type, then is there any wonder why you may be angry, bitter, sad, depressed, lonely, and anything else? It's because you're still trying to like, put a square into a hole, or bite, you know what I'm saying? And it's not actually going to work. You got to figure out, okay, there's this symbol, and this symbol of this type of person keeps popping up because I'm not paying attention to this type of person. Is a creepo, is an idiot, is going to abuse me, hurt me, and manipulate me later down the road, and it's going to eventually lead to a big confrontation. Pay attention to these things. Symbols are important. If it wasn't, why do you think every business has a symbol? When you think of, I'll give you an example how simple a symbol is. When you think of, let's say Walmart, what do you see? Do you see the store? And if you do you see the sign above the store? Okay? If I say a restaurant, whatever, a pizza shop, whatever, you see it. Automatically you see the colors, and it's usually red, and then you'll see the name, or red and green, and all these things. Right? Why is that? And why are most restaurants utilize the color red in their scheme? Okay? Because they understand that it affects your lower chakra, or your lower vibrations, the energies. That's your survival instinct. Food, clothing, shelter, hunting, gathering, things like that. It affects that part of you. It activates that hunger inside you almost immediately. When you see that color red, it hits you and vibrates and wakes you up. Okay? You could have ate 2 hours ago, now you're hungry again. You're really not hungry, you just saw the sign triggered, damn. Jeez, I remember how good that tasted. My goodness. How many of y'all watch commercials and you normally wouldn't eat this food, but all of a sudden you see this pop up on the screen and you say, man, you know what? I want a pizza. Where the hell that came from? Right? You normally wouldn't eat it, you don't think about it, but now here comes that Pizza Hut commercial, that Domino's commercial, and then y'all look at each other and say, I want a pizza. Where'd it come from? Symbolism, the programming is still there. Pay attention to symbols, because symbols are your subconscious mind communicating something to you. And when you start to pay attention, you start to master your life and take control of your life. And then now, when a certain symbol hits you and tries to trick you like you're hungry, you the master and say, no, I ain't falling for that crap this time. That symbol's activating that part of me that's going to desire something that I don't necessarily need at this moment or at any point in time. But if you don't learn that, you don't understand how to control that or master that. So then it will always affect you, and you'll be then what? A subject or a slave to your emotions, and not a master or controlling your emotions. Unfortunately, a lot of people in societies around the world are slaves and servants to their emotions, not the other way around.
Correct. Well, another area I wanted to shift into real quick, because it kind of, again, connects with the topic, Heka-Egyptian Magic, connects with what we did last night. We didn't talk about this because this is another brotherhood or path of black adepts that's connected to this energy. Some of you might be familiar with them, some of you might not, called the Vril, spelled V-R-I-L. Okay, she knows everything. Mm-hmm. Right there. And there's a whole section in this book on the Vril. And they were an assassin type of order, or an adept type of order. I just want to take a couple of brief excerpts out of here so you can understand what they dealt with. All right. Bramley's suggestions that the brooms, swords, and skith used by the Black Shadow Men were really poison gas weapons bring to mind a science fiction novel written in 1871 by Sir Edward Bulwer Lytton of England, Vril, the Power of the Coming Race. The story concerns a powerful subterranean master race called the Vrilya, who harness an electrical-like energy called Vril that can be used for healing or for destruction and killing. The energy is dispersed through wands or staves or sent out mentally. This story may be fiction, but many novelists, especially of science fiction, have an uncanny ability to tap in to alternate or parallel realities. Now, when you read a little bit more, again, I'm not going to get into the whole thing. The assassins, those that were able to tap in, even though, again, you got to be careful because a lot of information is passed as fiction, mythological, but these were actual practices that a lot of these adepts had the ability. And more so the mental aspect, as it said there. They were able to send this energy out mentally. Now, I want to back that up into, because you're going to see in these orders, chanting or mantras was a very, very thing that was practiced consistently because of the power that it contained. All right. So some of the stuff we did last night, and even when you back up to when we did the Kali ritual a couple of months ago, in the tones and the vibrations are the frequencies that are sent out that can bring and alter change on a molecular level, on a mental level, okay, on a spiritual level. Because what that does is when one reaches a certain vibration. Now, let me give you an example. I don't know who did or did not experience last night when the one chant we did, when I said, if you notice when we got into rhythm, did anybody in here feel like there was a lot more people in the room that was actually in the room? Right? At first, as it starts out, you hear it. You could hear that there's a group of people there. But when we started hitting a rhythm, a frequency, a pitch, and a tone, what it does literally is break the sound barrier. And it opens up portholes in the sense of different type of energy that we can allow in. And then what it is there's literally, quote unquote, for lack of a better word, there are other beings present with you chanting, literally. Okay, because you are now breaking or removing that veil or that door that's closed that's preventing you from tapping into, quote unquote, let me use terms you can grasp, the spiritual realm. You welcome those entities and energies in. So when you keep doing it, and we really just scratched the surface last night. We didn't go into it intensely. One ritual we will plan will be exclusively just a chant circle. And we'll do chants for a while, different chants. We'll incorporate, different archetypes. And that's a whole different spiritual experience. You come out of that feeling like you can fly, literally, because your energy level it changes. But the power that you see here, when it says in here that some of these orders or some of these spiritual practitioners had the ability to send this energy out mentally, that is not fiction. That is a fact. You are your thoughts. Okay?
Let me add this as well. In Egypt, in Kemet, Heka, however you want to pronounce it to make you feel great, words of power. To the ancients, they were considered like atomic power. the ability to create, to destroy through words. Okay? This is why they say Ta or Bata uttered creation into existence. Sound causes vibration and frequency. Vibration and frequency causes movement, matter. Matter starts to rub, creating more matter, which eventually can personify into physical. They understood the science behind this. We're just catching up in this day and time to the science behind that. But however, contrary to a lot of popular belief in what the Egyptians believed or Kemetics believed, they didn't believe in good or bad as we think of it today. They didn't think of good or evil, because their magic was either utilized to create or destroy. They did not give two craps. If you harmed or try to attack them, they will destroy you, and they will keep doing a hika or mantra or chant until they destroyed you. Okay? They didn't believe in this, oh, I'm going to just, pray for forgiveness for them, and I'm going to, they didn't believe in that. They believe in straight out, you come at me, I'm coming to get you. Or, let's do something productive and create something that can assist us, or change things into something that can assist more people. It depended. They didn't look at it the way we do today. Today, everything we want to do has to be right, and it has to be beautiful, peace, love, and light, and we're all going to get along and hold hands and kumbaya, and we're going to be lovely friends forever. They didn't care about all that. Okay? If the deities or the archetypes, when they utilize them, didn't respond, they would do an onslaught to destroy the deity until they responded and got the results they wanted. See, they don't want to tell you this in the modern day Egyptology or Kemetic circles or things of that nature, because it goes contrary to their view of Ma'at and everything else. They didn't give two craps about that. If you dig deep enough, you will understand and see that. We're always given the nice version of Anubis, or we're given the nice version of Ta or things like that, but you're never told that Anpu or Anubis was a guard or master over the gates of the spirits of the dead. And Anubis could either send an onslaught to you or could assist you. Either one. They don't want you to know that, because they want to paint this picture that everything was lovely and so utopian there. And that's a false lie. Okay? Because if you feel like that today, you best believe you're what? And DNA ancestor to those people, you feel like that today as well. Ain't nothing changed. Everything appears to change, but it's all still in different vibrations or frequencies of the same thing. And when you understand that reality, you understand there is no good or bad. They're all just different varying degrees of the same thing. An energy, a force, or a perception of what you have at that energy or force. And how you use it is how you use it. But you do understand on this path, there is consequences for everything you do. So if you ain't got the balls enough to do something and stick with it and deal with the consequences as they come, then don't do it if you can't deal with it. You understand? That's how they viewed it. I understand there's consequences for everything. Whatever comes, hey, bring it. Bring it. But I ain't going to be scared or afraid and just sit there and let people smack me up and all these philosophies that make you feel like you're supposed to be humble and pious, and people are abusing you and trying to hurt you. You best believe you come at us, our families, our friends that we care about, we're going to destroy you. Ain't no ifs, ands, or buts. Oh, well, maybe. Panini, what do you think? Do you think we should vote on that? Do you think we should, hesitate and gather a mass meeting while they're over there picking you off like this? No, that's not how it works. I understand? And that's why the mentality, it's a long process. It seems like, okay, yeah, I'm on this path now and I got it. No, it's a long process, because we still view things sometimes from peace, love, and light. We don't view things from the reality of peace can be a lie. Okay? We don't view things that and see things like love can counter that with fear, which can lead to hate and all these other things, right? We don't deal with these things. So we'd rather just paint a pretty picture and say, oh, this is how it is. No. The reality is, when you work this, you got to realize you're the creator and the destroyer. So be prepared.
I want to back up to the peace thing you said, because in that, if one is seeking peace, right? What is that? What is that a confession of? If one is seeking peace, what does it mean that you're in a state of at the moment?
Chaos.
All right. So the next question I ask people is, all right, say you did obtain that peace. All right. Say you did. We get to the point where a lot of these people on what we call fluffy paths or right side, whatever paths, that are adverse to dealing with the reality of it. You've attained this peace. We're all holding hands. We're singing Kumbaya. We're meditating. I love you, brother, sister, Alafia, my beloved, and we're all hugging each other. Everything is fucking candies and roses. The next question is where everybody starts scratching their head. We know it is a reality, not a speculation, a theory. Chaos will return. It's going to happen. The question is, how does one maintain that peace? How do we do that? So you got your peace, you got your love, but there is going to be a moment. This is really, if you go back to the Star Wars trilogy for an example, it shows you this. A lot of these movies try to show you that these concepts where there's this group that's trying to promote freedom, unity, and love and peace on the planet, that it never seems, no matter how much they do it, and there's always periods where there are peace and prosperity, and then there's periods where there's war, death, destruction, chaos, etc. And then again, in order to have the peace, there was the war, death, chaos, destruction before it. So nobody has a plan. See, the problem is when you look at it again in its totality, the answer is what he just said. One, we can establish that's all an illusion. It's not real. And people spend their whole life chasing something that's not real. And this is why in these cultures and religions and philosophies and dogmas, they become disappointed and miserable because they set a bar of expectations that is not a reality. Unrealistic. This path doesn't teach you that once you get yourself in a state or at a level where things are going good in your life on all levels, you're progressing. But it teaches you to give you the tools to now, you're the warrior geared with the tools. Now when the bullshit comes, you're ready. Because the bullshit's coming again. Yep. I'm telling you it's coming. So don't sit here and think because I'm going to, see, that's the other thing. People go into all these cultures and studies because they think it's a cure-all, heal-all problem for everything in their life. That is not true. And I can't stress that enough. What this basically does and what it basically tells you is this is a path that now, okay, I just came through a level where I was dealing with so many different hardships, so many different problems. I overcame so many different obstacles in my life. All right, now I'm at a point where, okay, I'm good. I'm on the road now. I'm driving. I'm going to give you metaphors and analogies. All right, I was off the road. Somebody ran me off the road. Now I'm back on the road. I'm cruising now. You know, I'm on the straight and narrow, quote unquote. But I know some point as I'm driving, there's going to be some jackass that's going to try to cut me off. Oh, yes. There's going to be somebody that's going to swing in front of me. See, where the expectations, somebody becomes a Christian and saved, right? And now the blinders are on because they think they found Jesus, they've been saved, and most people get saved when something traumatic happened in their life. This is why when most cats come out of jail, they're either Muslims or saved Christians, or they found some type of dogma in prison. Look, man, you can read Mother Goose and get saved while you're in prison because you ain't got shit to gravitate onto. But I'm saying the false realities, the false expectations. This path prepares you moving forward. That's the difference. It doesn't say, okay, here's the roadmap. You need to get to this point here. Now you're here, and that's it. That's not what it means.
Let me give you an example. Like he was saying, peace. Right? How that chaos would enter in a room full of everybody who's peaceful and loving and caring is that you're going to have a group of people, those people who are peaceful, that are going to set themselves apart as being the most peaceful. You understand this, right? So now they're the most peaceful compared to everybody else in the room. Chaos just entered because now the most peaceful are either going to be attacked, right? Or they're going to cause conflict with others because they're going to have to try to prove that they're more peaceful than the next person. And now, conflict just entered. Chaos is back in. Here we go again. It's that easy for chaos to enter because chaos is always eternal. How do you master chaos? Is you control the chaos by bringing it into your perception or perspective of what order is necessary in your life. what his order in his life may not be what is equated to what is necessary in my life.
That's right.
We're all individuals, and we all have different experiences and different events happening as we speak. You have to find how to bring your chaos into order enough where that chaos doesn't destroy the work you're trying to do, and then leads or facilitates things to expose that you really didn't have order.
Correct.
Okay? How do you bring the order? You deal with your bullshit. Okay? Because the chaos can enter in several ways. One of them is through your own bullshit that you're ignoring. That you're trying to say, I don't have that problem. I'm good. I'm saved. I'm righteous. I'm pure. I'm holy now.
I'm tainted.
You know, I'm Tut Ankh Hakim Bey now. So, you know, I have the title, I have the name, so I've become superior now. Right? But yet, Tut Ankh Hakim Bey is working at Walmart, has 3 ladies who claims to be his wife. All of them are pregnant. Put him on child support. He can't pay for it, but he wants to be King Tut Hakim Bey. How's that? Because he hasn't dealt with his lies, his false illusions that he created about himself. See, he created this false illusion. I'm a pharaoh. I'm a god. Please, somebody in this room, tell me, what pharaoh was poor and broke? Exactly, that's what I thought. But they want to take titles of I'm Pharaoh Allah, okay? Or I'm Pharaoh Tahuti Ma'at Junior Ray, right? And now that makes them feel lovely at the end of the day because they got the title, they got the outfit on, you know what I'm saying? They got the namaz and the moves on, you know, they're wearing the collar, the crook and flail, and they're walking down the street looking holy. And you look at him like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy in the middle of New York City looking like this, right? And you're like, oh, what? But you've seen it. Everybody here has seen it now, right? We've seen the Isley brothers every week in the Hebrew Israelites somewhere out there, right? Yelling at you. They got it all figured out. But when they leave,
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Exactly. But then when they leave, some of them are going to the projects to live. But yet they're telling you.
Tell them about the ones we saw in Orlando.
Yeah. Okay.
I came up.
These were the worst Hebrew Israelites
I wish we would have filmed this. We should have filmed this.
We were sitting there in downtown Orlando. He had come up to visit. We were kicking and chilling, right? I was showing him around. We sitting there, taking a break from walking. The Hebrew Israelites are sitting there in the corner. They're not yelling at anybody. They're not even dressed, dude. They're just sitting there in a little congregation. You notice the Hebrew Israelites because they got their symbol right there and stuff. And we're like, yo, this is the poor, brokest excuse for Hebrew Israelites I ever seen. You know, Hebrew Israelites, they're quick to do that. These guys were sitting there checking out booty, talking all this trash to each other.
I had no problem with them
they
doing that.
They had hip hop on in the background.
But tell them the one dude what caught my attention was one dude came up in his work clothes from some restaurant that he worked at.
Yeah.
Right? Now, here's what's going through my head. See, when I look at shit, I could go sit. There was a lot of shit going on that night downtown. I can just sit in one spot and just observe people for an hour and learn a lot by just sitting there and not doing anything. Just watching. And I saw that one of them came up. He had on some restaurant. He came from cooking in some restaurant or something. You could tell. I don't know where he worked, but he had it on. The thing that killed me was I heard him come up and he says to the dude, I just got off of work. And then he put on, only thing that they put on, they were so poorly dressed, they just put on some like thing that they threw over their head that they draped over themselves and I guess looked like whatever it was supposed to be. But I'm sitting here saying, and these are the same people that telling you don't be part of Babylon and the system of the devil and all this. And here's this dude who just came apparently working a job for quote-unquote Babylon, and now he's going to be a hypocrite and just put some little cape on that he threw over his regular work clothes, and now all of a sudden he wants to pretend like he's a righteous Hebrew Israelite. This goes back to what we were saying earlier about you cannot hide in a spiritual system and just think by symbolically by throwing that little whatever the fuck it was that he threw on over him that's going to mask what's underneath it, because it's not. We know you're still that dude that's cooking, fronting, pretending you're about this pro-black agenda movement, but you're working for the devil every day, who you call the devil anyway. And now you want to be out here screaming at other black folks. And the thing is, any of these women that come by that are dressed any revealing on any level, they want to sit there and call them whores and prostitutes, but they're staring at them.
Yeah. Go figure. They point you out quick, but they doing all this.
Breaking their neck.
As if they still in the corner on the hood, right? But they doing all that. But then they want to call you a whore, sister. Well, what made you point me out? You must have been looking to point me out.
How do you know?
Because if you were really righteous and looking for the righteous sister, would you be finding ways to just point that out? No, right? See, that's how chaos enters in these things. Because we don't address that shit within ourselves. So now we externalize it and find it in everybody else, right? You know, you have a lot of these people who are so extreme and hate other people to the extreme. You know, their phobias against people, all kinds, right? And according to certain psychological studies, clinical studies, a lot of these people are really have phobias against the very thing that is dwelling inside of them. They ain't gonna tell you that because they're struggling, wrestling, and trying to suppress it so bad. But in reality, they're attacking the very thing that's dwelling within them. You have to understand that chaos can manifest in a lot of ways, dude. It comes out in a lot of ways, and it will find a way to wreak havoc in your life until you learn to bring it into your order. You have to work diligently to bring it into your order, because if you don't, it finds ways to mess your life up. It will. And it's not, I'm not saying chaos like it's an external force and a deity or God. Don't get that confused. I'm saying the chaos within you is what's causing you to destroy your own life. But we don't see that, so we'll say, oh, geez, the devil made me do that. No. The devil didn't make you do crap. You did it. Right? You didn't have to yell at that person in the middle of the street, make him jump out the car and beat your ass because you thought you was Hulk Hogan or some crap, right? You didn't have to do these things. But that chaos within you never brought into order caused you to do that. Now you're in a situation and you can't handle yourself, right? Now you want to blame that dude for doing it. Well, he did this to me. No, you did it. You started it first. You brought it out, but now you want to cop out. You know, a lot of people like to use the cop-out game, and that's what happens. So what are some ways y'all can find beneficial ways to deal with this? Create your own rituals to address your crap.
That's key.
Okay? Create your own rituals. Find what color symbols or codes you need. Okay? It's not the same. Just because me and Beniti say red and black, and that's what we like to work with all the time, does not mean that red and black has to be your color. You might like black and purple. You might like whatever. It's what you vibe with. Okay? Don't get fluffy now with it, you know, and be like, you know, I'm gonna have the rainbows with me and you know all that shit. No, I'm not saying all that
works
crap.
for me.
Yeah, that's not what we're saying. We're saying find what works for you, right? And create your own ritual. Okay, you can say, well, you know, I have self-esteem issues, so I'm gonna create a ritual where I keep standing in this damn mirror till I find myself goddamn good looking or attractive or whatever the hell it is. That's an example. You can do various things like that to deal with that. Okay, you don't just say, well, I have low self-esteem, and then go about your business like it's not affecting you. When it is. Every day. Because every day you're finding something to knock yourself down about. When it's not necessary, you can build yourself up. Okay? So, how do you do it? You attack the problem. You create something as simple as a rituals like that, in your way, your form, your matter, and you... Consistency, though. You have to be consistent about it. You can't say, well, I did it all in one day. I'm saved now. I'm great. You know what I'm saying? And 2 weeks later, you're back in the same boat. No, because it doesn't work like that. Whatever age you are is how many years you've been dealing with your bullshit. If you're 30, that's 30 years of your own bullshit. You can't get over it in one night.
Let's back up to two things. Heka, two things that you actually just tapped into. Let's elaborate a little bit more on. There's one principle connected to Heka called Huhi, right? It's spelled two ways. You'll see it in the text. A couple ways, actually, in English. You'll see it sometimes spelled H-U-I. You'll see it sometimes spelled H-U-H-I. It just depends on who's translating. And most people are in line with the definition that it's the creative force of will, is what they say. Now, Brother Ravana Noon just mentioned a methodology of how you deal with the chaos is by creating your own rituals to deal with whatever it is you got to deal with. Now, if it's saying that Huhi is the creative force of will, who is the driving force behind that creative force of will? Who is? Say, I can't hear nobody.
We are.
We are. That's correct. So, you, again, embody the principle. So the person that has to will that creativity into existence is you. So when it says all those terminologies we use when you read in the Coming Forth by Day, where Unis would say things like, I've now transcended the skies like Heru and become Re Harakarti. I've now manifested as an aspect of Ampu or Anubis. He tapped into the aspect of Heka that deals with the creative force of will, and has now raised himself, or the individual, the magician, has raised themselves up to embody the aspects of the archetype. I can't stress to you how important that is. When you do a ritual, if it involves Anubis, you in that ritual at some point you become a manifestation. You should become a manifestation of that. If it's Kali, it's that. Whatever it is, the ritual should be centered around you. Technically are the ritual. If you're approaching a ritual as if I'm going to do this ritual and I'm looking at some external things to come into this ritual and solve a problem for me, you got it all fucked up. I can't put it any other way. That is no different than a Muslim going to make salat and praying to Allah for some salvation, or a Christian going to a service, and when it gets to a point where they can put their hands together, kneel down on the floor and look up to the sky and say, dear Heavenly Father, please help me with my divorce and my marriage and blah, 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 and whatever. It's no different. That is not the way that this should be perceived. It is, I mean, I can't stress that enough, because unfortunately people continue to work rituals, and now let's get into consistency. That this is important. Because why is this important? You can't do it just once, twice, 3 times. Sometimes, here, let me give you an example. Some people will say, well, why did that person do something once or twice and they got immediate results, and this person been working at it for a year or 6 months, or they did it 15 or 20 times? Because certain issues need more energy and attention than others. So somebody that you might look and say, well, damn, they did that and they got results right off the bat, because what was needed to address it was fulfilled. So whatever energy was required to deal with that, it was satisfactory. Okay? But then there's some that you got to keep plugging at it. You might have to do it 10, 15, 20 times, maybe more, till you can get a handle on it. Now, where people get frustrated is because they come into this thinking it's a fix-all, that if I come into this spiritual path, that this is going to fix all my problems. Nobody ever said, you show me where, in any aspect of this path, where anybody who really knows what they're talking about, any historian, current practitioner, adept, tells you and promises you, hey, if you come into this, shit, you got it made. You ain't never going to have no problems again. All you got to do is do this ritual. And if you do know anybody like that, get as far as fucking away as possible from them as you can, because they got a game. They got an angle. This is work. What this path, again, promises you, giving you the tools to arm yourself to deal with whatever you got to deal with. The good and what you determine the bad. Because, again, bad is perception. Good is perception. Morals are perception. Another aspect of this path people get stuck on. They bring their personal morality into shit. I can't do that. That just doesn't seem right. To you. Okay, that's fine. Then you back the fuck up from that and you don't deal with it. I got no problem. If you come to a ritual and you say, Brother Beniti, Brother Vanu, I'm not really feeling this. I don't think this is right for me. There's the door. Have a great day. But there's going to be 10, 15 other people in there that feel it's right for them. And that's okay. So one has to understand when working this path, do not check your morality at the door. Morals are personal. Now, I'm not saying that just act like an ass and just be disrespectful. I mean, yeah, be a straight buffoon. There's common sense morality, and then there's personal morality. Common sense morality is, I'm not just going to walk up to this man and speak ignorant to him and disrespect him because I know that's going to bring confrontation. That's common sense morality. We're not talking about that. We're talking about something Bal Cadman bring up, like on the show. He brought up about sexuality in the human body, right? You heard him what he was talking about. There's still shame in that. So some people have personal morals when it comes, per se, to individual sex rituals, collective, or just anything that deals with the human sexuality of the body. You watch some people regress back into being immature. And a lot of it, you heard, if you go back and listen to what he said on the show, he brought up the shame factor. That's a personal morality. Do you know a lot of these rituals were done in the nude? Yeah. Because they believe for you to connect truly with the energy, it's best to do a ritual in the complete nude. I've said that to some people, they act like children. Oh my God. That's that shame coming to the surface. You understand? So these are principles one has to understand, because when we deal with Hu-He, the creative force of will, the person behind that will, which is you, is the one driving the will. What did he say during, what was that one part of the ritual when he came around the last time and I said to him, hey, Noble Amir, it looks like you made it. What was his response? Anybody remember? What was his guide? What did he say? Anybody remember paying attention? We don't write this shit just to write it. He said, yes, will and determination was our guide. He didn't say the Most High guided us around. He said our will and determination is what got us through the journey. That was symbolic. At that point, your mind should have went to, okay, we must be getting towards the end of the path. Didn't say it was the end, but you knew at that moment you had accomplished something. And the creative force of will behind that accomplishment was you. Then what were you asked? In whom do you put your trust? Which was the funniest goddamn question of the night. Because I heard some funny ass shit that I'm still talking about today. This cat right here, right, gave one of the best answers I've heard in years. Better than any religious answer. I asked this young man right here, who did he put his trust in? He said his dad. Okay? Think about that for a minute. His name, he's a junior. Think about that for a minute. I'm not going to tell everybody's answers. Some people got it right off the bat. You know, there was a few. Some of them are in this room. There's a couple in this room that got it right off the bat. Some of y'all said some crazy ass shit. Some
Aliens and all kinds of
somehow. This is the person in the room. The person in the room that said, I know, are they here? I can't remember who that was. It was in the middle. That was the funniest shit that I've seen in about 5 years doing this. I asked somebody, in whom do you put their trust? I know. I've been talking about that shit all day. It's the funny, till it gets tired, I'll stop talking about it. But what that makes us realize when we do this, where everybody's mind is at. It's just like, whoa. I mean, I just heard some crazy ass shit. Some people were smart and they just stood there, they didn't say anything. But those were the people that thought, is this a game? Or, no, it's not a game. There's no right or wrong. But I'm saying, the principles of Heka, there were many, because Arab and Eastern mysticism in the ritual we did last night has its root in Heka. You just got to look hard enough. It's there. So by experiencing what you experienced last night is a prelude of the possibilities. And what does this do? Remember, ritual is transforming on all levels, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and on some levels physically. Okay? Because you're going to be able, let's say, 3-4 years from now, 3-4 months from now, or 3-4 days from now, whether you're conscious or not, an issue of hardship might arise. You can draw back from this experience and use the metaphors and the symbols from it to come up with a solution. I do that all the time. I can use my Masonic, my Rosicrucian initiation, my OTO initiations, and when adversity comes my way, I can tap back into what the ritual represented and the lasting impression it left on my subconscious mind and work out a solution. That's the real purpose of ritual. Not because I want to do it to join some club and get some accolades and some titles and some cultural garb. That's what people do. When this brother stood up and asked one of the questions last night, if it's not an order, those are those orders, where they're clubs, where you get a membership card and you pay dues. And because you're a good paying dues member in good standing, I'm going to give you a special title. You don't know shit, but because you pay your money, that's how they do it. I give you a title. That's why when he asked that, which was an excellent question, that's not what this type of order is. You understand? That's the difference. This is something you can constantly draw upon tomorrow, next year, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. This is something you can use to pass on to your kids, your children. Because you can use the symbolicism. Because remember, symbols are constantly communicating to our subconscious mind. There were so many symbols in that ritual last night. You had the sword, you had Baphomet, you had the occult colors, you had red and black, you had the warrior statues, different generations. You had the different other colors on offer. You had smells, right? The smell factor, you can smell something now. Now, anytime you smell that incense we burned last night, it's automatically going to take you back to the ritual. Because smell can activate time, vibration, because the very aspect of the smell hitting the olfactory nerves of your nose can take you back. You can smell incense right now that you burn. Maybe you ain't burned it in 5 years. You say, oh, I used to burn that. You burn it and you say, shit, you can remember when you burn it. I used to burn that in my college dormitory back in 1990. Why is it the mind can activate just from the very aspect of smell? If it can do it based on smell, how the fuck can you not think it can do it based on something that's been stamped there that you went through mentally, emotionally, and physically? Okay? Just the same way music can do the same shit. I can play a song now from back in the day that's going to take you back to a period where you vividly remember everything. Colors, clothing, people. You can see your sister. I remember me and my sister used to play that song in the basement when we were playing dominoes. And you could see your sister, how she looked back in 1987 when Billy Ocean was playing. You see her. You see what she was wearing. How is the mind that powerful? If you don't think this is a reality. It's some powerful ass shit. But it's just as easy as it's powerful, it's as easy as to erase by boom, here's religion. You're saved now. So now you forget all of your powers that you naturally have, and now you're fucking worshiping, you're in church, you're doing all this other stupidity shit, or you're peace, love, and light. Peace, my beloved. And now you've just replaced that with your new religion. That's what this path is about. You are the driving force of that creative will, or that hui. That's why I say, see, they'll spell it sometimes S-I-A, hui, heka, and sia, they're interlinked. They're connected. Don't look at them as if they're deities, because I see some people that study this system, they too are guilty of making it like it's some external deity or some external force. And that's just not the case. I think what we should do is we're going to kind of keep this on a time frame, because we are going to go again, because we have guests here from out of state. Which book? Oh, I have one copy here. The Jinn. The Jinn Connection. By Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Guiley. And I'm going to be honest with you, some stuff in here is straight bullshit. So I've referred just certain parts of this. I ain't into all that reptoid shit. It's personal if you are, but the stuff on Black Magic, the Vril, the Brotherhoods, a lot of the shit we went through last night or we're talking about, that stuff is real. You can research it. Some of the other stuff, I think, is speculation and theory, but that's up to the individual. Okay? So what we're going to do now is, because I think we've given enough of information. It's how we do in the new format when we do these presentations. We do a presentation on it, and then we open the floor for questions. But be mindful of this, so we can stay on a consistent time frame, because we do want to try to wrap this up by 10:30 the latest. Again, because we do have some guests here from out of state. We are going to go eat again after this when we're finished locally here. But we want to stay on the subject matter, very critical, because some people, and this brother right here has expressed this to me several times, when we navigate away from it, we tend to take from, in essence, what the discourse was about. So let's try to keep it on the topic. Please don't ask questions about my dreams, because it's personal. So let me address all the dream questions. Dreams are symbolic. They communicate personal messages to you. All we can do is give you maybe our opinions on it, but do not take what I say, he says, or anybody says, for that matter, because nobody can interpret your dreams but you. And sometimes they take time to hash themselves out. So I get emails about it, and that's how I respond to every email like that. I'm not going to interpret your dreams for you. So personal, spiritual experiences are kind of just that. They're personal. We can maybe dialogue on that on a personal level. That's not really a suitable forum for a collective setting. That's something you can talk with me maybe individually, him individually, if we have the time. That's a personal thing you want to talk something one-on-one. I don't really think that's... We kind of cut back on that over the last year. To bring that into a collective setting, I think it takes away from what we're doing here, because I know some of y'all be sitting there like, what the fuck is this motherfucker talking about?
Yeah, and also on that note, you remember this on the show.
I remember a lot of
Somebody, shit. Somebody wanted to reveal some of their sexual choices.
Was that the transvestite dude?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And things like that.
That's a little too much.
Yeah, that's a little too much for a collective group, collective form. Individual, you want to address that? Find somebody else. No, I'm just saying.
No, but I remember that shit.
Yeah.
Now, what happened was, we were talking about kind of similar topic, you know, dealing with the reality. Now, fortunately, this dude, he was a dude, quote unquote. I guess you could say he was straight to an extent, but he had a fetish of having sex with transvestites. That's not something he really needed to bring out
on a show.
On a show collectively with everybody. Now, we're not judging him for that. Look, all right, let's be clear. I'm totally against that. Now, let me say another thing. Another thing on this path. Stop this fake shit about being liberal. Take a stand for something, or you don't take a stand for nothing. Let me say this, for the record. I'm against that. I'm totally against homosexuality, but I do not hate homosexuals. I do not hate transvestites. It's against my own personal level of spirituality. I didn't say everybody in here is. I didn't quote a religion. I didn't speak for a group. I'm speaking for my damn self. I am not for homosexuality, but I do not discriminate or hate homosexuals. It's a sexual preference. I know I will not fuck a transvestite. Let's get that out there. But if somebody does, I know you're dealing with some shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to hate you and like single out people that fuck transvestites. Okay, so let's say that. But notice I made the statement, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for anybody in this room. I'm not representing a group, an organization, myself. So this brother that he's talking about, he just went into this tangent in depth of how he picks up transvestites, how he bones them, and what turns them on. We were like, whoa, blah.
It's a live show, mind you. Thousands of people are listening right now. He's airing out his business. You understand? Remember, this is being recorded. This right here, right now.
He was out of Cali too. I remember.
You don't want your personal stuff out on YouTube. And next thing you're getting emails and all kinds of stuff, and you say, well, where the hell is this coming from? Don't forget, you're on here, being recorded, and it will be on YouTube. That's why we're addressing that, because it's your personal stuff. You don't want your personal stuff out there. Although your faces ain't shown, what about if your voice, later on you're somewhere else and they match the voice to this old video or something like that? You understand? Certain personal things, keep it that way. It's not for everybody. Okay?
Right.
No matter how much you are seeking help or assistance, be mindful of who you share this with, because people can use anything to stab you in the back, manipulate you, or hurt you with it. Be mindful of what you say. Be selective of who you share things with. Not everybody's for you. Understand that.
That's right.
Okay? So always be mindful of what you're doing, where your surroundings and everything else, because things can be used against you. Okay?
So
I watch YouTube so many times, right, and see all these people, and they got these platforms and all these things, and they're airing out their dirty laundry, right? And next thing they wonder, why did their YouTube page get shut down? You ever wonder why? You said too much. You understand that?
It's necessary.
You don't think they monitor YouTube and all these things? Of course they do. Just because you got away with it for 2-3 years does not mean that all of a sudden somebody's not going to complain against you and say, yo, they're a little too much or a little too this. My kids can get on here. Yeah, be mindful of what you're doing. You understand?
Big time.
Because people are, not everybody's your friend. Cut that illusion out now. Okay? Most of us have associates more than we have friends.
That's right.
That's another real reality. Because you associate with each other, that doesn't mean you're buddy and you're hanging and you're cool like that, right? Because friendship is trust that is earned. It's not just, well, I'm gonna trust you because you're right here and I have no choice but to trust you. Bullshit. Okay, in my world, my personal world, not for anybody else, in my personal world, I just don't give you trust like that, because I done seen too many snakes come in the midst of nice fancy clothes and whatever. And they just end up hurting you or stabbing you in the back. Now, I don't play that game with people. Yeah. Now, as an associate, yeah, we can discuss it and we can talk, but you will always notice, what do we say on the show? We'll tell you. It's your perception and it's personal, it's your thing. I can't give you the answers for your personal problem. I can suggest things by experience and things that may be similar, but even if it's similar incidences or experiences we've had, you still going to perceive it differently than she is, or he is, or I am. You understand? So I can't tell you the one answer for your problem I can suggest is it may either work for you or not. You can't blame me for that shit. I'm just suggesting something. I ain't gonna say I'm God, Jesus, or whatever else you're looking for, and I have the answer for all your problems. Because unfortunately, people do that too. Now I'm gonna go to a psychic, and she or he said this, and then didn't come true. Now the psychic is a failure, right? Well, you put your trust in somebody else outside of yourself. What do you think you're gonna have? Why do we say, who do you put your trust in? Myself. You understand that? It all starts with you, and it ends with you. Right. So if you keep that in mind, you realize, okay, I have associates and friends I can share things with. They can give me suggestions, ideas, but nothing's going to start until I take that first step. Period. Okay?
Right. And let me add this, and then we'll take some questions. You're going to notice on this path, your circle becomes very small.
Tiny.
It's very tiny. The more you grow, and I know there's a lot of people here, and I heard this brother testifying like hallelujah, like praise the Lord over here.
Amen.
It becomes small because naturally on this path it should become small. Because bottom line is, the bigger it is, all the confusion that he was just talking about tends to work its way in. You're going to find it gets real small sometimes. And there's change and evolution through it consistently. And that's okay for all the aforementioned reasons. Now, the other thing, we haven't gotten to it yet, and we have been figuring out when to fit it in. We are going to do another ritual where it's kind of goes into the Igun traditions, where we just get everybody to sit in a circle, and we're going to pull one person at a time in the middle and just go to work on them. Now, I don't recommend you participate that if you don't want your shit being known, because you must tell us at that point. Now, we will ask you, is it okay if we open and talk about anything? Because I've seen all types of shit come up in those things. Personal shit. One dude, sexual molestation. You might have been the molester and it's going to come up. And we don't want that to happen. Yeah. So that's something we're working on. Now, if somebody really wants to go to work and do stuff like that, that's going to be for a select few, because that's not really for everybody. Because I've heard people say they're ready for it, and I watch people just break down in tears, cry, and run out. And it is. And we're trying to figure out when to fit that in. We postponed it for months. We eventually will get to it, but we'll know when to get to it when the time feels right. That's all. We're not putting a time frame on it. We kind of just go with the flow. But like I said last night's a prelude to kind of get you to the point. I mean, we've sat people in the middle that had mental sicknesses that just came out, and they just were not telling people. Crazy other shit. People doing shit they shouldn't be doing. Good stuff came out too. Yep. So I'm not just going to paint it all as gloom and doom. But don't come to a ritual if you say, yeah, I'm going to come. Here's the other problem. When you do things like that, like Ronald was saying, asking questions, or you partake in a ritual where it's going to provide solutions, do not come already with preconceived answers in your mind that you want to hear. Yeah. You're going to get fucking disappointed. You know how many people came to to an Igun ceremony like that, sat in the middle, and they wanted to hear, you in a past life,
such a guy,
you used to be this great warrior. See, that's the shit they want to hear. They want to hear how great they were, or how great they are now. But then when you say, look, man, did you just beat your wife's ass last week? Is it okay if we talk about that? What did you say? Well, before we proceed, brother, is it okay we talk about that in front of everybody? You just beat your wife's ass 3 days ago, correct? Now they're looking at you like a monster. Oh, I didn't come here to hear that shit. Then you're at the wrong place. Yep. Because you're going to hear that shit.
Let me say this. When we do the Igun, which is communication with your ancestors, your ancestors don't tell you what you want to hear. You will realize this, okay? Your ancestors will, and I said this earlier, they'll tell you what you need to hear. And some of what you need to hear ain't things that you're gonna like. May make you feel very uncomfortable. But remember, your ancestors are connected to you in your DNA. It's not some floaty thing outside you. It's communication from within you, and you are emanating out to the people conducting the ritual, and they're able to tap into hearing the ancestors speak to them as well as you. Okay? And it's gonna come out. So those situations that you are not dealing with, that you're delaying, it's going to come out. And it can be very intense and very emotional for people. Okay? This is why certain rituals are always closed off for a select group of people. Because not everybody is ready for that. And like he said, we've seen people run out the door, never to be seen again. You see them 5 years later, they're homeless, they're walking around, they're on crack or whatever else, because that in itself just totally opened them up for something they thought they was ready for, but weren't. Not even closely.
At all.
So if you're not ready to be real with yourself, and you think you're going to hear all the lovely stuff, don't do it. Many of us have had readings in here, I'm sure. And when you went to those readings, you heard things that you weren't ready for. You was like, damn, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that.
You can be
okay,
a
but
Babalawo.
Yeah, that's one thing you'll always hear. You could be a Babalawo. You could be a priestess. You could be all this.
They tell everybody that shit.
Yeah, that's money sake things. But then they'll hit you with some other stuff, which they tell everybody to a lot of times. Somebody's going to die in your family.
Yeah.
When isn't somebody not
somebody's
dying
always going to die in your family at some point.
Yeah, right? They never tell you exactly when. They don't say, well, Tuesday, March 25th at 9:30 p.m., such and such is going to die. They'll say somebody.
Here's a real good one. I don't think you were at that one. I know Jack was at that one. This is with my godmother down in Miami. This was on 103rd Street. Now, I was sitting here. I'll never forget this. My godmother was sitting there. We were in a circle, and we were doing a similar thing that we're talking about. So, every time I see my godmother go like this, and she's sitting there, and she's smoking, and she just got a hand. I always know when the left hand comes under the right hand, and she's sitting like this, something's going on. Now, I'm feeling it, too. So, she calls this guy to sit in the middle. I'll never forget this shit. Guy goes and sits down. Now, as soon as this guy sits down, all I see are, like, CIA guys knocking on his door. I see him just sitting down writing a bunch of checks. So, I'm trying to figure out, like, what's going on. My godmother turns to me, and she goes, I'll never forget this shit. She goes, Michael, say what you see. So she was seeing what I was saying. So I'm just like, then all of a sudden, once she said that, it clicked in. I started to look at the dude. Turns out this dude was scamming people out of money. He was writing fraudulent checks. And I was seeing CIA and like FBI and the police knocking at his door. I kept seeing like men with badges and in suits knocking on his door and going into his house and cuffing him. And then it would go from that to him signing checks. So he sits down. When I tell you a motherfucker looked like he saw a ghost, I said, let me ask you a question, man. Are you scamming people? Are you writing bad checks? This motherfucker looked like he saw Casper the Friendly Ghost. Because, again, he thought he was going... Now, mind you, this is a dude initiated in Ifa, crowned Ogun, got his Magick, his twins, everything. He's done pretty much every ceremony. So this is technically, quote-unquote, a spiritually conscious person in African spirituality. So he thought, well, I never forget when he walked and sat down, he thought he was going to get told, Ogun said that blah, 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 that you are a special son of his. He thought he was going to hear all that fluffy shit. But when he sat down, and then my Madrina, who was his Madrina, basically told him stuff that he needed to do ASAP to get that shit corrected right away. Or you're going to spend some serious time behind bars. You understand? I use that as an example to show you that would be what we talked about in the very beginning, dealing with bullshit. We're not just talking about mundane shit. Like if you know you're a fraud and you're fucking with people, or if you know you're doing something that's not correct, if you know you're beating the shit out of your wife, but then you want to sit amongst us and pretend that you're spiritual and holy, do you realize at some point it's going to come out? You realize that, right?
I'll give you an example. Y'all ever been at the rituals or when we're doing this class and me and Beniti look at each other? That's because at that very moment we both felt and saw the same thing. We're not looking at each other because we like, yo, hi, bro. I see him when I'm down here, right?
And then we talk about it later.
Yeah, but we look and then we keep it in our mind. We talk about it later because at that very moment a spiritual impression came. Because what happens in classes and rituals, things like that, you're open, okay? Whether you realize or not, the vibrations, the drums, everything's opening you up. So people who are spiritually perceptive can pick these things up. Don't think that, okay, well, I left this ritual, nobody found out, I'm hiding things. No, it comes up. It might have just not been addressed then, but it will come up.
It may not need to be addressed at that time.
It may be a personal thing that needs to be, but you have to understand, you can't hide from yourself. Where the effing hell are you going to go? Okay? You can hide under a rock, but who's there in the rock with you? You. right? So understand, you can't hide or run from yourself. Okay?
Let me tell you one in here
it.
that happened right here in this class right here. She don't come no more, and Sonia's a witness to this, and I think some of y'all might have been here. There's a brother that comes to this class sometimes. I keep their names discreet. He gave his cousin, you know, she was interested. All right, so she comes and sits down. Now, the whole time I'm doing the class, I'm fucking distracted because it's the first time coming. She comes in. First, when she walks in, I see this man walking behind her, not a physical man. I see spiritually this man behind her. She sits down. The man sits right next to her. I said, okay, I'm just going to see where this is going. The dude's gesturing to me, and he's dressed in like this priest attire. So I said, well, let's see where this shit is going. She sits down. Now I'm trying to do the class. I was doing this one by myself. And I'm getting distracted. So I said, hold on. So let me stop. I said, does somebody, your father just passed away, right? She goes, yes. I have this on video. You can go watch it on YouTube. Never met this chick before in my life. Now, her father passed away about 4 days before she came to this class. She sits down. She goes, her eyes, you can hear her on the video when you watch the video. She goes, yeah, why? I said, because he's standing there right next to you. He just passed, right? She goes, yeah. And he was dressed in like voodoo attire. Now, this chick is Haitian. I find this out a little bit later. Long story short, not to get in depth and put people's personal business out there. There was a strife going on with her and the family. The father practiced voodoo, and the mother was straight Christian. Well, anyway, after seeing this, I even gave her the father's name. It was Ralph. It's on the video. Never met her before. I said his name. She says, yeah, that's his name. That's his name. Well, I said, there's some stuff you got to do because you haven't addressed it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I said, all right, we'll get together afterwards. She came down and saw me. Long story short, I did some work with her. You know what I'm talking about, touched. All right. To show you that if you think what we're saying is not a reality, yeah, we call it touched. No, I'm not. Nobody knows who we're talking about. I saw Aisha. I said, look, man, there's something I see that you need to be careful of. You got to be careful you don't overwhelm yourself because you're going to go a little bit batty. I said, don't take that the wrong way. Yeah, well, I know this is all new to me, but I want to... Well, long story short, a bunch of stuff came to the surface, and she did start going back. Okay? I tried many different ways to get her out of it because a lot of things came to the surface. Stuff with her mom, past stuff with her dad. The best way I can tell you is she kind of overloaded herself. And people don't understand. Nobody can really bring you back from that but you. Now, how I tried to bring her back from that, long story short, she don't even come around no more. She might text me once in a while, but now she's back to being bona fide saved Christian. Literally. She's super sanctified back in the church. Because she counted something on this path where a moment of fear kicked in, and she didn't want to deal with it. And I already told her, I saw this, I said, look, she went too hard. She was going hard on all these things. I gave her stuff to do with Tahuti. She was doing it. Stuff with her mom. Things was progressing. But then there came a thing where, bam, shit just jumped on her ass. And I told her, I said, look, this is what you need to do. She, quote unquote, chose to do some things that she chose to do, and that's fine. And again, I'm not going to get into depth about it. But the thing is, it ties into what we're saying. Sometimes when the reality of what's going on comes to the surface, the reaction of what that is can manifest itself in a multitude of ways. This individual basically decided, she came to the fork in the road and was like, I'm not, nah, here's the fork. You know, we'll say you're traveling, here comes a fork. Which way are you going? You going this way? You going this way? Well, this one just decided I'm going back that way. You understand? And now it's a whole different level. Put it this way. Stuff started happening to her. She was telling me when she was driving, she drives a bus. And she was on the bus and the lights just started to blow up on her because she was doing something, thinking about something. And I tried to tell her, when you're working with certain voodoo spirits that's connected to her by blood, it just started all haywire shit stuff. So all that stuff kicked in fear, and she ran the other way. But anyway, long story short, let's wrap it up with, anybody have any questions on what we talked about? Now would be time to raise your hand. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. So, you guys are saying that if you know stuff that you need to work on and you get symbols and it comes up to the surface, don't ignore it, address it, and work on it.
Yep.
But how do you do that if it's not something that's just, concrete, like, you got to change it? If it's something that's emotional and you need to address it.
That's a good question.
Let me address that. Give me a symbol that you're attracted to. Anything.
a symbol that I'm attracted to. Peace symbol.
Like pizza, okay.
No, peace, you said.
Oh, peace sign. Peace sign. Okay.
Pizza?
I must be hungry. Anyway, I am hungry actually. But that was good, man. She triggered my.
That was good. So you see where his head is at? This motherfucker thinking about pizza and shit.
Because sometimes, let me say this, because sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm addressing this issue because it comes up, and I think I've addressed it until something makes me react, and I react in my old way, or the way I'm used to react, or trained, or grew up reacting, instead of the way that I know I should, and I think about it later, and I'm like, oh shit, I reacted the same exact way. Okay. Like, how do you deal with it?
Well, first of all, you just did one step of that, which is identifying the actual programming that you're still under and the effect that you're still under, which is reacting in an old way. However, what you haven't identified, I don't know if you have, but what I have from what you just said is how did it begin? Because somewhere in your early childhood, teenage years, or somewhere, that event or situation, you know what it is, because you're here, I see you're triggering it back to it.
Well, where does the sadness come from?
Yeah. I was about to say it.
So you're very, very, like, somber sadness all the time. What you need to ask yourself is, what brings that up all the time? Like Ramanu said, what's making, like, you got that sad, like, it's an old type of sadness. Like, what's making you feel sadness, like, all the time?
Yeah. What's the event? Because you can see it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some of it, but you can see there's this one particular event that you just connected back to. You have to go back to that moment, because that's when the whole programming was actually created and put a groove in your mind to consistently create that reaction to a moment that triggers how you felt at that time. Okay? Now, one of the ways to do that, you know the moment, you see it. One thing you can do is reverse what happened. For example, whatever happened, you know what it is. Reverse the outcome to be something that was more beneficial than detrimental to you. You have to go deep into that moment. You could do it in a ritual, you could do it in a dark room, you could do it however you feel. Best to do it in a dark room. You might want to use a mirror, okay? To reflect, a black mirror to reflect, to open up the subconscious gateway. I'm just saying what I'm hearing. And go back to that moment, clear while reflecting into it, and reshape that moment to something that is not as detrimental anymore. And you'll begin to start the process of changing your reaction from the same outcome or same reaction to every event that's similar. You can start to reshape that so your reactions are different. So you pinpointed it, so go. So
how you can cure the hurt of what's been done to you, and this is important to understand. So you can go back specifically to individual that has done what they've done, and you want to visualize the outcome. All right, the person that's hurt you, what you need to do is, it might be painful to relive that situation, as uncomfortable as it might seem, but how to subconsciously get over it. When that incident took place, you need to now switch the incident into your favor. Now, let me say this, and don't look at it being too aggressive if you see visually taking that person's life. Because you might need to visualize and see that to get you up over the hump. Because you bring up it's an excellent question. How do you overcome, like what you're saying, when the same process keeps repeating itself over and over and over? And that's a tough one, because when it's something that's constantly with you for long periods of time, it's not as easy to deal with. But you'll find out in this process, it's painful, but at the same time, it's necessary because this is the only way you're going to be able to deal with it.
I have been like it'll come up, and then I avoid dealing with it or thinking about it, or try, but it still comes up because it's there.
Because what you're resisting is going to continue persisting. Now you've identified. So as he's sharing, I'm sharing. You have to go into that moment. And you have to deal with the pain. By the way, there is no way avoiding the pain of whatever situations are that have affected you. You have to deal with the pain in order to open yourself up enough to deal with it, understand it, right? Grasp it enough to go into it, to reshape it, to be favorable to you. You have to deal with that pain. There is no avoidance of that. We all want a solution to avoid pain, right? Everything how I want painkillers. We got all kinds of stuff. Sometimes the pain gonna be there, and it has to be there because it's something you have to go through. Okay? And one of the reasons you go through it is you learned on a journey last night. Some of y'all were kneeling down and were in pain. We could see this, right? But you endured in your mind. You had the will and determination to continue to go through to see the other side. Same, similar thing, dealing with what you're going through.
But know this, and you haven't done this, and you need to say to yourself, one, why? Part of the reason why you can't get past it, one, you can't blame yourself. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I'm not talking codes, but you know what I'm talking about. If first and foremost, if you can't forgive yourself, that's a hard problem. It's not your fault, number one. Number two, have you said out loud to yourself, this is not, you haven't, that's why. This is not my fault. This is not my responsibility. And stop feeling guilty because you didn't do anything. Once you come to that realization, that's step one in identification process. And then you can't do the second part until you do that first. You have to forgive yourself, and you have to really realize this was not my fault. This was not my doing. I was not responsible. See, what we tend to do is when we can't sometimes put something in perspective, we want to take the blame. Well, maybe I brought this on myself. Yes and no. Okay? And you might have brought it on yourself because you put yourself in a situation, but that sometimes doesn't justify what somebody does. There's a difference. So once that's the identification process. Then when you move forward and say you go back in time and address it, that's where the actual event takes place that you're doing work, to fix it. But anyway, we won't talk in depth about that. But okay. We could talk privately. Okay. Anybody else got any questions?
I understand the proper way to address archetype energies and what have you, but even myself, I still will sometimes bring religion, and I'm still working on the aspect of leaving it where it needs to be, behind me or what have you. What's the proper way to address your ancestors?
Before we answer that, I just want to say this because I know some people here might or might not know. Lady Mystic listens to our radio show. And I want some of y'all might know this, some of y'all might not. I like to say this because I want you to see her being an example of a lot of the stuff we're talking about. I do this all the time, and I will continue to do this until she's 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the game. She contacted me, was it via YouTube? How'd you get a hold of me again? Just so people know the story.
I contacted you through
YouTube, okay. YouTube. And then I connected her to, obviously you see the show on there. Right. All right. Well, anyway, she contacted me, we talked, and I did a couple consultations for her. And I want you to understand that when you listen to her talk, and then you can ask you a question, and you'll hear her several times in on the radio show, calling in, you'll hear her ask the same questions. I bring this up because she came not too long ago. We're going only back to October, and I'm telling you this is important. Though she had some level of consciousness, she was searching. But as she's saying now, because I know the question she's going to ask, I already know, she's going to show you how even not so long ago, how she came from strict religious, maybe not, she'll explain, a strong Christian background and jumped into this is what I'm trying to say. I mean, literally just jumped into it head on. So the question she's going to ask in relation to, and she asks these a lot because of what she's going through right now in the transition period, how she still finds herself incorporating religious aspects into certain things that she's doing ritualistically. But I will say this before you ask the question. In a short period of time and dealing with her personally, I've seen the growth. And the sad thing is, for some other people we know, who I won't mention no names, there's people I know that have been in this 10, 15, 20 plus years. She's made more strides than these people we know for 10, 15, 20 years. So I say that to say, even though you're going to ask your question, I always tell you this, don't beat yourself up on that aspect. But anyway, go ahead and ask your question. I just want people to know your background.
So, a lot of people, I hear them saying, and I even find myself saying sometimes, acting as though my ancestor is like a god. Help me, or do this for me, or whatever. What's the proper way to address your ancestors? Speak to them.
Just talk to them.
Way? Okay.
Talk to them. How would you? Okay, if your grandma was here right now, how would you talk to her?
Well, I might ask her to help me with something. Like
yeah, but how would you address it? You wouldn't say, "Oh, grandma, please let me." Oh,
great grandmother from the bottom.
How you doing today? What's up, grandma?
So
I love you.
That's how you talk to her.
I appreciate you.
That's how you talk to her, as if she's still here.
Okay.
There's no difference. See, what we have this concept of because of religion is you physically can't see them anymore, so now we spook the crap out of it, right? And we go into this heaven and hell concept and all these things. So, see, well, my grandmother's good or she's possibly in heaven, so you understand the religious connection. Now, well, somebody's in heaven, that must mean that they're with this, or so let me talk to her like I'm talking up to her. And you will notice, you see people doing this, even that they've been practicing African tradition for years. When they think about the ancestors, talk about them, they still look up. Like, okay.
Well, they do this shit with their hands.
Yeah. What
is that?
Where are you looking up? This is a circular planet, supposedly a globe, right? Whatever. Every direction you look is up. Even if you're looking down, depending where you are on the planet, could be up or down. You understand? That's the concept we have to get away from. I have to speak to them as if they're part of the Jehovah concept, 144,000 gowned in white, and they're just floating to you because you're calling them. Yes, my daughter. Yes, my dear. How can they're not do that? Your grandma could have said what, right? When you were younger, what do you want, child? I'm making lemonade. You're bothering me. Well, you think she's going to address you differently in the afterlife now because she's in the afterlife and now supposedly, she's got some great wisdom she encountered over there? No, she's still going to say what? You still going to talk to her like I would talk to you. You understand? How you spoke to her when she was alive, you would speak to her. You're correct. That's a religious concept that we speak to them differently now, and it's no different. Why do you think when you set up your ancestor altars, you have some of their articles, maybe part of their clothing, pictures? Because it's trying to keep you in the realm that they still here. They're still here right now. They're not floating around somewhere, you understand, in some astro mystical plane, just, with angels and all this, because that is deep in our subconscious. It does play, that program is still there, so just practice talking to her like you would normally.
And I think one thing you got to do, though, also, that's key. You got to create your own methodology. Did you ever make the staff? Your staff? Have you done that for your ancestral altar? All right. One good, effective method, strictly in dealing with Igun or ancestral worship, really effective. Take a staff. You should always have a staff at your ancestral altar. Because what it is, you heard when we were reading about the Vril in that book, how they used the term wands and staffs because they were focal points. There's a little disciplinary technique. Exactly. You want to, if you have, when you have your altar, I know you do, you want to put in the front, tap it 3 times and say the name of your, in this case, your grandmother. Because what that does is, you may or you may not fully grasp how it opens up the energy to connect, because it's a gesture that you're doing. But say for an example, you don't have to go through the whole intricate thing where you're addressing, say, a host of Igun. Like, say you want to go to your altar tonight and talk to your grandmother. We're just focusing on that right now, because that's what you said. You can take your staff, do whatever it is you do to prep your environment, whatever, burning, whatever it is you do. There's no right or wrong way. Trust me when I tell you, it's the most effective, simplest method. It takes 5 minutes. If you want to sit, which I prefer, stand, which I don't prefer because I can't concentrate as much. Sit. Before you sit, stand in front of the altar and just say, I summons the spirit of my grandmother, and say her maiden name. And tap your staff 3 times, and then just sit down. And don't do anything. And I guarantee you, as you're sitting there, give it a little bit of time, the spirit of your grandmother will come through, and then you do what Ravana Noon says. You talk to her just like, hey, what's up, Grandma? Not, hello, great-grandmother from the abode of the spiritual. That's all that religious shit. Because you're going to find out. Now, here's what's always going to happen a lot. I notice when you do it, you're always going to see them when they were young. You may not see her how you saw her the last time. They always come and appear to you at their peakest point in life. Like every time I summons my mother, who my mother died from multiple sclerosis. She was very ill. I mean, had it chronic, like Richard Pryor had it. Was bedridden on tubes, and pneumonia did it in. I don't see my mother in that sick state. I see my mother, how she looked when she got married. The way she looks in her wedding pictures is the way she comes to me all the time. But I've been doing this since 1996 when she passed away. So I can sit in front of my altar and just do that, and poof, literally like David Copperfield, bam, my mother just appears. And we talk like a mother and son would have conversation. If I got to ask her questions about females, money, relationship, whatever it is, I talk to her about. You understand? So you can get that guidance. And like Ravana Noon said, they're not gone. They're always here. Especially a bloodline ancestor. It's not limited to just bloodline ancestors, but I'm saying a bloodline ancestor is the easiest one to activate. So, yeah, that's anybody else?
So where is
I'll get you then here. She was first, and then I'll get you. Go ahead.
Okay.
And then we get you next, bro.
You brought up names, and you're saying that you should use the name that they were born with?
Their maiden name that they were born with. Yeah. Because if your mother was married and you're using your father's last name, you're activating your father's bloodline. Yeah. Do you understand that?
Okay, so I don't know.
Just say it.
My indigenous language, when we speak that, we're supposed to call them by that name because that's the name of spirit. It's considered the Native
American
name.
tradition,
Yeah.
correct?
So,
there's different rules that govern different traditions. Technically, by essence, that's not what the person was birthed into this world under that particular name. Now,
there's a whole naming ceremony.
Yes, and many did. Not just in that tradition. You'll find, even in religious traditions and certain Ifa traditions, you'll find it's always taught that the paternal name is the name that keeps the bloodline alive, and that's not true. It's actually the maternal name.
So I should actually use Dorothy sister.
That's her name. That's what you should use.
And
for your dad by his name, correct. Now, they do that in these traditions because most of them are male-dominated. They always use the surname of the male. Because think about this. How can that be blood? How can that be 100%? When you're working any goon type of ritual, okay, where you're trying to invoke and manifest the spirit, not per se a naming ceremony, let's say you're trying to actually manifest the spirit, how can you invoke a spirit that was not known in this world or came into this world by that name? Because your mom or my mother, right, wasn't born with my father's last name and was somebody else completely for many years until she married.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Then the other thing came in my mind that made me realize something. So the word we use for grandmother is huku, right?
Okay.
But I just keep using that because that's probably what I would have called her. But I would also use the native name.
But that's okay. But when you say that, what are you visualizing in your head? That's okay.
Sure. I always
All right, there's your answer right there. That's the whole point. That's all right. Now, if you're just saying grandmother, you ain't got no visualization, then whatever you're doing, you ain't doing anything.
No, I see it.
That's it.
I'm gonna say to help you, right? My 2 grams, they both passed. I don't always address them by name. One to me was in Spanish was abuela, right, and one was abuelita. When you put the ita in Spanish at the end, that's like your homegirl. You know, that's like the one you're closer to. So when I do it and I say abuelita, I see my grandmother that I was closest to, as opposed to when I say abuela, right? Even if I don't say their name, I see actually the one I was closest to and connect with that, and she still comes forth. You understand? So it's not, you don't always have to say the name itself. It's good to, trust me, a lot of times it's good to, but if in your culture Because you got to understand, a lot of this also, you got to understand your tradition or culture. Don't always forsake your own culture. If there's things that have worked for thousands of years, it could work for you too. But you can incorporate it into what you're doing now. You understand?
Yep.
So that's how I do it, right? Because that's how in Puerto Rican culture, that's how a lot of people have done it. There's always the abuelita, the closer one, and then there's abuela, which is, you know, the one that was more stern sometimes, a little more distant from people. That's how we've done it for years. And
I'm sorry, but you have to be careful, because when you use a last name in certain rituals, I'm telling you, this shit will happen. You might bring forth a distressed spirit in that bloodline. This is why I'm telling you this.
So be careful.
Be careful, because
So far I've only called her though, and I'll be like, well, watch it, because that's what her name was.
Right,
Mine
but-
is like a spin-off.
But say you're using your father's surname, but you're using your mother, but you're putting your father's last name behind it. There might be one of your bloodline ancestors that's trying to find a way through, and it may not be a pleasant one. So by activating the name, you're putting the tone out there that opens that porthole for them to come through. So be careful, because when you're saying last names, there's others listening, for quote unquote, lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it sound spooky, but I'm trying to tell you, you can activate other. Now, let me say this with ancestral worship. I'm not going to paint all of it as pleasant either, because some of them look for, the opening.
That's why I only call her. Because I knew.
But here's the other thing. You just mentioned something that another thing we don't address. Tricksters. Because you can see a visual of somebody that looks like your mother, but remember, you have, in spiritual circles, they have, Alan Carter talked about them, specters. Okay? Specters are spiritual beings that can read your subconscious mind and make things appear to you the way you want to see them.
Yep.
So they can appear and create the illusion that you're communicating with your mother, and there's one simple way to deal with it. All you got to do, and anybody has this experience, real simple. If you feel at any moment you're having a visual experience and you're not certain if that's really what you're seeing, real simple. That's all you got to say. If it's your mother, all you got to say is, Mom, show your true self. Mom, show your true self. If that is not your mother, that will just collapse into what you're really saying.
Yep.
And it may not be what you think it is. So I'm saying, depending on the tradition you're working, like Ravalanu said, you can incorporate. It's not necessary. It just depends on what you're doing. But I would be careful when you're summoning, saying, like, for an example, when you talked about that ceremony, names, be careful what you're summoning, because others are listening. Real quick, let me get Yahuda, then I'm going to get you in the back. We're going to take a few more, and then go ahead, Yahuda. What was your question?
Question was, where spirits come from? You say you summon them. Where are they coming from?
As far, you mean the origin?
As far as that thing is spooky thing. I mean, where you summon your mom,
like
where
grandma,
she's coming
okay.
from. I mean, she's inside of you.
See, I think where you get confused when somebody asks a question like that.
Yeah.
When we say all things are inside the subconscious mind, we're not talking literally. We're talking anything you conceive is in here. It's how you activate it. You understand that? So if you say you're summoning the spirit of your mother, yes, you're summoning it from here, one, because it's connected to you by blood. Blood runs through your veins. The same blood by DNA that runs through your veins runs through your mother's veins. Now, we're not saying that they don't transcend and evolve to a higher level of existence that per se is not confound to this physical realm. So, if your answer to your question of locality, are they coming from somewhere else? My answer to you would be yes and no. Because, first and foremost, you can't activate them if you don't go into here. So when we say everything comes from within, we're not saying literally everything comes from within. We're saying in order to activate it, one has to go within. That's just like saying we live on Earth, but in the universe, there's other galaxies within the universe, but we're on Earth. But sitting from this appearance, it gives the illusion that these other planets are outside of the universe, but in essence, they're really not. But it creates that illusion. So, same thing if you said, I want to tap in or invoke the energy of Tahuti, right? You can look at that two ways. I'm sorry, Tahuti represents certain levels of consciousness that deals with intellect, knowledge, and wisdom. Now, there are energies, quote unquote, that you can activate outside of yourself. As far as we know, there's different incarnations of Tahuti. Say you want to focus on a specific path of Obatala, right? Because there's a path of Obatala that represents a warrior type of energy, right? because there was many manifestations of Obatala as a warrior. So you can go back and channel that energy technically that existed outside of yourself, because they could have represented other people that manifested physically on this realm. But how do you do it? Step one, before you do it. There's nothing you can do externally to do it. You first got to tap into it here. So I think where people get confused when we say nothing exists outside of yourself, because you're the starting point or the origin. Now, real quick, on another note, it's pure bullshit if you think that there is some God, I'm not saying you, I'm just speaking in general now, that if you think that there's some old God man sitting in the sky pulling the strings to everything, now we just got to use simple common sense to dispel that myth. So, no, there's nothing external happening on that level, but yes, the spirit of your mother has now, let's say, evolved, quote unquote, to a higher spiritual existence.
So the spirit can transform physically like the law.
It can go back. Now it has the ability to transform back and forth at will. From matter, from a solid liquid gas into a gas liquid solid.
So how would I know if she transformed at age 19, at age 40, at age 80?
At some cases, you may never saw a picture of her when she was 19. She might appear to you when she was 19, but at some point in that experience, you should be able to identify who you're speaking to. That's why I said if you're not sure, say you don't even know who it is. Say you just go into a random meditation and you see an image of some young lady. You don't even know who it is. Then in that case, I would just say, the young lady that I'm seeing right now in front of me, reveal yourself to me. That's simple. See, I'm not saying this because we had this conversation on the way down. Sometimes the answer is not even that complicated. It's so simple to the point. But we're sometimes looking for something so intricate and detailed. And I'm not saying you're doing that. But what I am saying is, if that happened to me and say I saw an image of a young woman that was my mother and I didn't know, I would simply question the experience and say, Spirit, whatever I am seeing, manifest your true self to me. Who and what are you? By the very command and invocation of that, it's going to shape into what you're really seeing. And the only way I can confirm that for you is you need to have that experience for yourself. I can't sit there and, I'm not telling you to accept that, but I am saying if that happens to you, do that and you'll get your answers. Okay? Angela. So again, we're getting caught back into trying to figure it all out before we actually do it. What I'm trying to say is, again, listen to me. You could never have seen, you say your great-grandfather, you never saw him. You don't know what he looks like. You never saw a picture of him. You don't know shit about him. All right? That's about as empty as I can get. So let's start there. They tend to come across and connect if there's like energy that they can vibe with. So your great-great-great-grandfather, say, his immediate granddaughter, who he lived with, saw all the time, spent time with, has a whole list of experiences and memories with, he might bypass connecting with her because you genetically are more in like sync with what he is. Yep. Now, how you identify what it is or what you're speaking to or dealing with is going to reveal itself in the experience. You're not going to know, because if you didn't know, then that's not really who you're speaking to. So what I'm saying is, like Yehuda's question, if Yehuda was having an experience and he just saw some random young woman in this experience, he would have to question the spirit. Spirit, it's as simple as saying, Spirit, who and what am I communicating to talk to? Reveal your true self. I cannot identify you. What will happen, I'm telling you, and I put my life on this, you will see that image just kind of like, you would see them dissipate. Like layers peeled away. You might see a monster. You might see a monster-looking figure, a ghoul, a skeleton, some weird, bizarre shit. Now that raises another question, if that's what you see. Then you might see what you see still stay there, speak to you and say, I am your great-great-grandfather, such and such. Now the dialogue is open. The porthole is open. The gate is open. You can now communicate. But you might see some crazy shit where sometimes they'll come and it might be your uncle who was a psychotic killer when he was alive, but he used your father or your great-great-grandfather because he needed to get through on this side. So what's happening is because your bloodline connected, he needs a way to come here to feel alive. and he might dissipate, and it might be one of your uncles that you did know. And he might be like, voila, motherfucker. You understand? Like, I'm here, bitch. You understand? I'm telling you the way it is. See, I'm not going to paint this shit, and we talk about this all the time. See, people think they're going to have an experience, and somebody's going to come in a white robe. Hello, my child. Sometimes, I've seen that. I had a crazy-ass uncle that was a drunk. He was a hustler. And anytime I try to call my great-uncle on that same side, this dude comes through like, ha, I'm here, can I do it now? I'm like, no, get away, and then boom, it goes back. This will happen. This is a reality. This happens. So I don't want to paint a picture that everything is like, I'm not saying you're saying that, but I don't want to paint a picture like you see in Ghost with Patrick Swayze. That's nice.
I've seen images of like imp, and then it
Of what? I didn't hear that.
like an imp.
An imp.
Like imp.
Imp. I-M-P.
As,
Did I hear you right? I-M-P?
IMP,
Okay, I got you.
And then it manifests bigger, as a bigger kind of creature, and then looking like a monster. And then, you know, I've seen that.
But you know what that is. Do you know what that is?
Do I know what that was?
When you see an imp. Say what you just said again. Say it again.
I saw images of an imp,
And then?
and then it became bigger, and then it manifested. That was out of my ex-husband. So it's my ex-husband.
Okay.
But it was several times it used to happen.
You know what imps represent when you see imps in visions. Part of it, you just answered your own question. Like you correlated it to stuff that was going on with your ex-husband.
Well, no, I saw the images coming out of him.
Right.
Like as he made.
Right.
Yeah.
When you see imps, always pay attention to the manifestation of. I know I don't want to get into like dwarfs and fairies and all that shit, but these are all symbolic. When you see the imps always represent this. Always know this: transformation, change, going through rough periods of growth, issues, blockages. Anything in relating to imps is always going to point you in that direction, because you're always going to see them as one, and they never stay the same.
Right.
Like you said, the same. So what's happening is something's being communicated to your subconscious mind. Part of it you identify, because I just heard you. But pay close attention, and this is why I tell some people you should keep a notebook. I'm not saying you don't or you do, but you don't. You should. You should keep it more detailed, and then you can go back and reflect, because you might have another dream about an imp that might be connected to your situation with your ex-husband, and then you can go back and compare notes. And sometimes it doesn't click at the moment that you're having it, and then you go, oh shit, this went with this. It's like putting a puzzle together. And now, in that moment, you go, we all have that moment of clarity. We go, motherfucker, that's what that was. That's what happens when you start doing it like that. You know how many times I sit there and watch TV? I called her one day, I'll never forget. I'm sitting there watching 2 movies. And I get up, and in between the movies, I decide to go to the bathroom. And as I leave, to show you how these can just happen, this shit can happen instantaneously. As I'm walking back from the bathroom, all of a sudden I hear holy death summons me to do a bath. Wasn't even on my mind. Didn't have no intention of doing any work with that. I'm saying, when you start working with this stuff, sometimes shit just pops up instantaneously. And that's when you want to go with it. So I put everything on hold, bam, did what I had to do, and that's it. The same thing can happen when you work with your ancestors. You might, like Yehuda said, Yehuda might be going into it. Here's another thing that will happen frequently. You might set out to do one thing, but something else entirely different happens. Especially with ancestral work. You might sit down and say, tonight I'm going to do a ritual to contact the spirit of my mother. You might go sit down and say your deceased father comes through, because he might say, wait a minute, I got some shit I need to talk to you about. That motherfucker can wait. You understand? And this is how they come. That's how, I'm telling you, that's how they'll come, and they'll talk like that. They don't talk like, Angela, my child, arise and come to your altar. I need to summon and speak with you. You'll hear them call you just like you used to hear them when they were alive. Okay? Anybody else? Real quick.
Say that ancestral spirit that you don't want comes and you don't want them either. You tell them get the fuck out.
Yes, because that happens. Big problem. You can look. Everybody has some psycho in their family. It's there. Trust me when I tell you.
Well, I got a few that I probably come to.
Well, you got a lot in your family. Trust me when I tell you. There's a lot. There's a lot.
That's why I've been hesitant.
There's a lot. You have Apache murderers, warriors, killers, bloodthirsty.
I know,
psycho
What if
too.
you
I
need
told
that,
about.
No, you need it, but
Stuff.
we say this all the time. You can harness that energy.
I died and I came back to life, and I was like, I remember everything.
But look, the thing is, you're going to deal with crazy ass ancestors that come through. So yes, you do have to be prepared to deal with that. Yes, it is. Sometimes it is as easy as telling them to get the fuck out, get lost.
And the other one just,
Sometimes it's not though.
I
Because
don't
once you
know.
let them through, the question I ask people is, can you send them back? That's a whole nother process.
Yeah.
And I watch people go crazy. We know a couple of dudes that's in psych wards right now. We talked about this one time on a radio show, I think. A brother right now that we know, started having seizures and he opened himself up to a whole bunch of shit. So, yeah, there is that caution. So, yes, be careful. Be careful. I don't say that, again, we don't say that to scare people. But again, we're not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to... This is reality. Not everything about this path is peace and love and gravy. Yeah.
It's real serious work. Trust me. It's serious work, but it's beneficial. It can be beneficial, but it also can be detrimental at times. So you have to acknowledge both sides of that. But the main thing is, like you said, you got to... If you're aware of what can or cannot happen, you're more prepared to work it than if you have no clue and just jump in it with nothing, no substance, nothing behind the knowledge how it works. Then you open yourself up more for chances.
Look, remember when we had Sonia? Let me give you another example. Remember we had Sonia, she did a class here, and we were talking about, she had an experience with the Holy Death. Let me tell you how crazy this shit is real quick. Something was going on, she did something for the Holy Death, she explained to me what happened. It also involved Anubis, it involved Set, they took her to this thing, we're not going to get the whole thing. They put her on this table, they did some stuff with her, etc., etc. So while she was telling me the whole thing, as soon as I hung up the phone with her, like, I started, all of a sudden, that Holy Death energy started fucking with me. So it kept drawing me towards my Holy Death, so I said, all right, let me go see. Something needed to be communicated. Now, to answer the question of being thrown into the unknown, I knew it was something, but I didn't know what it was. So now I go sit down, and you know what came through as I'm sitting there the whole time? And she could verify, and I send it to her. I'm hearing Clarence Carter, change is going to come. I have no fucking idea. I'm sitting there, the only thing, and I see the Holy Death there, looking like the Holy Death, because that's the image we have in our mind, just slowly moving around to this song. Everybody knows that song, Change Gonna Come. Familiar with it? Clarence Carter?
Yeah.
Because of what she was going through, dealing with. I said, look, man, all I can tell you is this. If I'm lying, you correct me. I said, all I can tell you is this. Sit down. The answers to some of your questions right now are in that song. Play that song, sit down. I don't know what the fuck that means, but I'm just going to pass it on to you. You deal. Now, if you want to finish the rest of that statement, go ahead, because you could probably elaborate a little more on it. Okay,
Anyway.
she chooses not to. We're not gonna elaborate.
Let me add this last part real quick so we can close it up. If you ever work in this, right? I've worked this for individuals in this room before and things like that. And all of a sudden, you may not be religious at all according to yourself or whatever, and you hear this gospel song or some blues song or something come out of nowhere, and then you put a visual to that, that's usually a spirit or ancestor, somebody trying to communicate something, and they're using a song to try to communicate something. Pay attention, like he said, pay attention to the song, because that's the message is being revealed through the song. It's important to understand that just because you summon your family, that's not always who comes through. Friends of the family can come through. That experience has happened also, okay? Now you have to identify is this friend of the family a trickster or is this shit real? You understand? There's a lot of work to it, but the more knowledge you have behind it, it helps you better in your working. That's what's important, okay? Get as much knowledge as you have to get while you're trying to get the experience. Don't go into anything, especially with ancestral work, blindly, because you can open up gateways and doorways that it's hard to close sometimes. So always remind yourself of that. But pay attention to the messages you have. Always write stuff down. That's important. Because many people have experiences, they don't write it down, and then they lose parts of that experience that they can't remember, and those things were important as they were happening. You understand? Because those are messages that you need at that moment.
Exactly.
So, with that, we're going to close it off.
Yes.
Okay? As you know, I'm hungry because pizza came out earlier. So I'm hungry. He hungry.
And real quick, we do have some books here. Like I said, I got one copy of this Jinn book left. Real quick, not to be too long with it. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, going back, because people will ask what book to read. I'm just going to throw some quick ones at you. This is a book people sleep on. If you haven't read Before the Pharaohs. A lot of these books ain't really talking about just what the title is. Another good book. Topics in relation to what we're talking about right now. Not tantric yoga, that's not. Secret societies, Illuminati, Freemasons. A lot of the orders we were talking about last night in this book right here. This goes back, Templars, some of the assassin orders. We actually had this guy on the show, Ralph Ellis. Solomon Falcon of Sheba. That gets into a lot of that stuff. Serpent in the Grail gets into some of the assassin orders during those crusade times. And everybody knows the history of the Grail, and it was always those that had the Grail in their possession was connected to something divine, quote unquote. Not what you think it is. That's some of the top ones I would recommend. But pretty much that's it. Other than that, if anybody is going to buy stuff, because we do want to get to the restaurant in a timely manner, they close at 1 o'clock. So we want to pack up so we can get to getting, pretty much. All right? I do have Lady Mystic. No, we're not going there. We're going to go to Bow Campus, right? Bow Campus in Miramar, which is slightly north of here. Anybody's welcome to come. Honestly, I really don't care if you do, because I'm going to eat anyway. But anyway, anybody's more than welcome to come. So if there's any books to buy, let me turn this off. I have your books aside, sister.